I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes. Like a doll's eyes.
I love this town!
Hello, city.
Welcome back, everyone, to City of Geek Podcast. We took the end of October / beginning of November off because Halloween is a super busy time for us here. 100 Days of Horror wrapping up. Everything goes on, all the tours that Kim and I had to give, and everything else. So welcome back. Thank you for taking the time off to listen to other people instead of us, I guess. Strange Eons or a Ghost Stories podcast or a bunch of other people.
And we got our new one launching.
Yeah, actually, that's on my notes here. I mentioned. But before we get into anything in that, we probably introduce ourselves. I'm Bob.
Cody.
Kim.
Tony.
Cody, as he's about to start eating, he's like, when the waitress comes by and says, "Are you doing okay?" that's
So Bob is fulfilling that awkward function by giving us the intro while Cody is full of biscuits.
Bob awkward? Never. So when this time we're talking about our horror television shows, stuff like that, kind of a general topic with general free-for-alls, to probably see where things go.
Do we want to limit it to a number? Or
yeah, we're going to see where when Kim says, "Get the fuck out of my house."
Oh, there we go.
We'll say we're done.
That's
So apparently I have to go drink wine at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
It's such a hard life.
It
It's
is.
a hard life.
I've heard some 9 a.m. wine drinking.
And those damn indie wine makers need to have some income support.
Yes.
And you're there to support them.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Because
an
how are they
independent
gonna
business.
Pay for their goddamn mustache wax, Kim.
Right?
There we go.
But I did want to get into a little bit of other updates before we start talking about our topic for today. First, we're talking about, since we mentioned it, about podcast updates for other things. So Ghost Stories is now moving to a different format, right?
Yes, we have closed off the season for a Ghost Stories. We had a good run, but Gabby and I want to expand, cover things outside the Pacific Northwest, cover things that we encounter on our travels. So we'll continue to share ghost stories. We will also be branching out into some more lore sort of stories, some urban legends, and some true crime, because that makes Kim happy when she gets to talk about murder most foul. And so our new podcast is called Ghoulish Tendencies, and we will be launching shortly. We're recording our first episode, actually, I'm going to say Thursday, which isn't going to mean anything in regards to when this...
Because we're recording the 5th, comes out the 15th, assuming I get everything out in time. So sometimes it's like, oh crap, podcast.
I'm like, Bob, it's the 16th. Where's the podcast,
Oh
man?
yeah. I get the message from one listener like, "Hey, Mom." But the logo was posted the other day, and it's really cool.
It's very cool. Gabby found an awesome artist.
Yeah, it's like
That
that
graphic
looks
is
like you and
awesome.
Gabby.
Very
Like
cool.
it's like well, Gabby's very distinct with her her hair and her glasses. It's like, oh, there's Gabby. That's definitely Kim too.
We need to get somebody to draw us.
That'd be cool.
I don't know. I might break someone's eyes. If people know what I look like. I'm a mystery. I'm like Sia. You don't know what my face looks like.
You want to be a mystery wrapped inside an enigma.
Except
Yes.
for all those
For all those
pictures
photos.
that you posted.
Those are nothing. Those are Rubens.
But I want...
That's an actor who's playing me whenever you don't see my face.
I just want it to be Bob and, like, doing this phase like Wilson and...
Home Improvement.
and then Kim's off to the side, and I'm like, it's like a sitcom, and I've got Tony on my back like this. We're all going,
And I'm the wife in the background that's just like...
Yeah, they're...
That's right. We get to be the imbecilic, goofy, comic males, and she gets to be the
long-suffering female.
Yeah, the long-suffering, way too smart for these Joker oafs females. So, a little bit of typecasting going down there.
And in addition to that, we've been throwing out a couple ideas for a possible side cast, but I don't know when it would start and what the details to it should be. Since we love to watch our really bad movies.
We do.
That's, Cody and his religious exploitation movies. Not really exploitation.
Christploitation. Dude, those are
persecution movie.
Christploitations.
His is Christ.
Christploitation.
Yeah, it's like persecution films, and then everything else I like to watch. So I'm not doing like maybe a podcast just about watching the worst movies on Metacritic. We know there are other podcasts out there that kind of do the same thing.
you're going to have to watch a Dinesh D'Souza movie.
Yeah, exactly. Get to cross that line. But there's something we're looking at here. If you have any input on how to approach that, which would be cool. We're looking at like maybe doing what's listed at the bottom of the Metacritic, bouncing back and forth between this year and all time. Based on things that would go.
I'm sorry. My neighbor has a cat and he's shirtless and is apparently quite attractive.
Is it
And
Jason Momoa?
It might be, but it's the cat that really adds that extra level.
Wait, is he shirtless or the cat shirtless?
The cat shirtless, of course.
I'm gonna say shirtless cats would not be a huge.
When you live in a building that is just windows and you're walking around with your adorable cat without
Wasn't
a
there a
shirt.
whole thing on Friends about this?
And he's jerking it.
Is the cat still in the room? That's kind of weird.
He's looking at the cat. It's really, they're not. Neither party is breaking the eye contact.
No.
And then alternately, I wanted to talk about some Crypticon updates. And wants to talk about Crypticon.
Yeah. Some cool stuff happening.
David Naughton got it announced since we were.
Yeah, David Naughton, Joe Bob Briggs, and I think there's one other. Was Bill Moseley added before last time we talked about
No,
it?
he was the first one.
Yeah, him and Felissa Rose were the first other ones. I think we mentioned them, but we didn't mention Joe Bob or David Naughton. So I'm looking forward to meeting David Naughton. I've seen I've seen Felissa Rose before. I've seen.
I feel
Bill
like Joe
Bill
Bob's
Moseley.
gonna wander
Joe
around
Bob,
the party floor.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I actually met David Naughton many years ago at a Hollywood Collector Show. Great guy. And I have my 12-inch of his hit disco dance single, "Making It," autographed.
You get
sorry.
12 inches. You get 12 inches from David Naughton.
You should talk to my neighbor.
You can see that far away.
I have excellent vision.
Let's get the telescope, Kim.
Kim's got the shirtless stud radar gun.
I'm just listen. I'm facing the. It's just right. It's right there. It's right there. What is a girl supposed to do? Anyway. I've derailed things. It's all right.
But yeah, David Naughton had a disco hit. It was the theme song to his short-lived sitcom, also named "Making It," which was It was made to capitalize on the Saturday Night Fever disco boom. And it's a pretty catchy little number.
I look forward to hearing it.
It's right around the time he did the Dr. Pepper commercials.
Yeah, those are famous, of course. And then also the Crypticon Film Festivals open up for submission. So if you are a person who has short films, such as the person sitting across the way from me.
No, I'm not.
No, I'm talking about Kim here.
I have some short films that I might be submitting.
Nice. I get to clap the clapper for those. That was fun.
I know. I was like, if you're helping to judge them, does that mean we get an in?
We probably are. You first ask Eric. Eric, if you're listening to it, just put us in.
Well, they're adorable little children. They're not little children. They're teenagers, but they're adorable, very sweet teenagers who are very excited about creating these horror films. And I feel like we're feeding the next generation of little tiny horror fans.
I've always thought about doing a very, very short film that's only like 15 seconds.
Do it.
And it's just Peter Bark running away from me. And then in the back, it's me, and I have a Trump mask on, and I'm wearing a Borat suit. And it's all in slow motion.
I think Jackass did that with
I believe
Not
they did.
that combination.
not exactly in that way, but essentially the same joke.
It's like a horror Jackass.
Oh, man,
Yeah.
that was great.
Terrifying.
The Procedure Part 3.
Oh, Bone Bat too. I'm stoked about Bone Bat.
Yeah, they're open for submissions too, so check them out.
Yeah.
Grave Plot's open for submissions as well.
Yeah,
check out.
this is year 2.
Yeah,
It's very
so this will be a
exciting.
lot of fun. And their Indiegogo's going. Remind me to link it on there. Bone Bat usually opens up, their Kickstarter usually opens up in December or so link it on that. We'll link it when the time comes. So a lot of our friends have festivals. We don't. We just have the guy across the way that we watch make eye contact with his cat. So that's
He's
our
making
horror.
some deep eye contact with the cat right now.
Yeah.
And please message me about the City of Geek film festival, which is just a screening of The Reliant,
Fuck you, Cody. Fuck you, Cody.
followed by Hillary's America.
Wait. Fuck you, Cody.
3 fuck you Codys and an angel gets its wings.
And the Birth of a Nation to follow it up.
So sweet.
Or a bat gets its wings.
Let's say
There we
bat.
go.
I like bats.
I like that better.
I like
They're
bats
happy
better.
bats, Bob.
Happy bats.
What does this have to do with horror TV?
It doesn't, but that I did reference to
No,
television
fuck
show.
talking about that.
So I did reference to television show. It always has a great Halloween episodes, Bob's Burger. So let's just go ahead and talk about horror television. Now we kind of got, the bills paid. No, we don't get paid money from any of these people. Crypticon, we need your check, Jason?
Yeah.
So anyway. Like,
Dude, if you were a stand-up comic, that would have been like the ultimate in flaccid. Wow.
like the movie we watched
Just that
last month.
silence.
Oh wow!
yes.
Even Catman, he stopped making eye contact with his cats and looked over here.
Oh,
So,
man.
like many of you, probably like as much as we watched movies growing up. We talked about this before. Probably I'm gonna say cartoons. That's what I was thinking of. Essentially, the first things I remember watching. But grew up a lot watching horror television. By even more of an intro than TV than the movies were. Because it pops you down, says, "Watch this, have fun, see you later." And next, 4 hours later, Dracula have gone by, and you're stuck. Do you guys, before we just talk about anything kind of hodgepodge, any particular early TV horror memories for you guys that stand out, or shows that really hit you earlier? Whatever I'm just throwing out.
Erie, Indiana was big for me.
Yeah.
Erie, Indiana was really big for me. It was like the kid version of Twin Peaks, kind of
I
in
can
some
see that.
ways. Like it only lasted for like 2 seasons, and then they tried to revive it at one point, but I think it didn't even last 1 full season. But it was a fun little cute horror kid show, and it was creepy. Like for a kid show, it had some really creepy moments. And it's all about this boy who moves to a place called Erie, Indiana. So that was when I was a kid, that was not missed for me. It was on, I think, Saturday mornings, and I used to.
Oh wow! I didn't realize it was Saturday morning.
It was a Saturday morning one, and it was not missed. It was not missed for me. Yeah.
That's a show I remember watching a lot here and there. I didn't catch it as much because for some reason the channel in Pittsburgh, they didn't really show too many of the Saturday morning cartoons and television shows as much as they showed news stuff for the Saturday morning for some
That's
fucking
what you get
reason.
for being a dirty Pittsburgher boy.
Yeah, I know. Hey, bring it up to George Romero, motherfucker.
Yes, for living in PA.
But that's one that I remember catching here. Didn't Joe Dante have a lot to do with that? I don't know.
Yeah,
I want to
have
say he
look
was a key
at-
figure, and I think he was an executive producer.
Yeah, I have to look
Hell, he
that
might
up.
have even directed a couple of episodes.
I wouldn't be surprised. They've been talking about bringing it back. I heard references.
Well, because
to.
you've got this whole nostalgia factor. Because another one that was big for me was Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah, that's kind of where my teenage, preteen.
Yeah, it
horror
was
came from.
preteen, I think, mostly, and it was Saturday nights because it was Snick,
Yeah,
and it was like 9:30 on.
it was 9:30. Yeah,
Yeah, and so there was this element of I'm staying up late to watch this show, and it was they just revived it as kind of a not really new, like a limited series. It was only 3 episodes, and I watched it, and it was cute. It was I thought a nice way to bring it back for another audience. I'm not sure that they're planning on continuing it, but it would be cool if they did.
Yeah. What I've seen, it seems like it might be kind of a tester. If it
Yeah,
hits,
if this
there
does
was going to be a
well.
movie, and that was delayed, pushed back, and they put out the show instead.
Because this was basically a movie. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a like mini-series style. Because each episode was like an hour.
Okay, I haven't watched
And it was
any
3
of it.
episodes.
It's on my list of stuff to watch.
It was again. It was good. I thought it was well done. The kids were likable. They were. The story was fun. It was a nice update instead of the more anthology style that the original was. This focused on one story. And went a little bit in a Goosebumps direction in some ways, but I thought it was pretty good.
All the stories you're telling have come to life. Is that maybe Goosebumps in this case, or I don't know.
No, yeah.
Shit, the cops know we're recording here. Get down.
But so,
Jesus,
like,
it's the fuzz.
looking like in the short list that I make, I didn't make as long as this. It's like there's strange how many like are television shows that are made for kids or kid based.
That's the ultimate gateway horror for kids is something that's on television. It's readily available, and even if it's it's targeted for a mass audience. So, and I always have a lot of respect for kid-based horror series and so forth because they're trying to introduce something that is considered not for kids to kids, and it takes a fair amount of skill to be able to kind of create that gateway drug for young fans to get into horror. So,
But
hats off
kids
to-
like scary stories.
Oh yeah, my thing is I have just a few scattered years above and beyond you guys in terms of the chronology of my existence on this earth. But I do remember that some of the most striking stuff that I saw was definitely leaned towards the horror element, and it was oftentimes in things that you wouldn't expect it. I mean, one of the very popular series that was in syndication when I was a wee lad many eons ago was the Speed Racer cartoon, the Japanese
Racer.
cartoon
Yeah.
about speed,
About Speed.
Racer, of course. About speed, yes. Who was a race car driver and had a member of his crew was a chimpanzee, and he was in love with a really hot girl with a bob named Trixie, and Spritle was the name of his kid buddy, and Chim Chim was the name of the chimpanzee. But there was one episode, and I honestly do not remember anything else about this episode, but the character of Trixie was having a dream, and she was running towards Speed Racer, who was this...
Go Speed Racer.
Yes.
Go Speed Racer.
Go Speed Racer, go. But in the dream, she was running towards Speed, who was her boyfriend, and he was of course a traditionally anime handsome guy with swoopy black hair and big anime eyes. But his back was turned to her, and she ran towards him in this dream sequence and touched his shoulder, and he turned around, and his face was this incredible demonic visage that was sinister and fang-filled and gray and had these enormous cat-like eyes, and it was accompanied by the appropriate sting of cacophonous music. And I couldn't have been more than 5 years old when I saw this, and I was terrified to my fucking core. So, and then, of course, I wanted to see more, which we all do when we're into horror. So that, yeah, it's always interesting to me. I grew up at a period in time where most of what you got that was horror was grown-up stuff. You know, my early formative. You know.
Like the Nixon administration.
Oh yeah, exactly. Too young
Axon.
to really realize the horror of that. But one of the first ones that made a huge, strong impression on me, because it was in syndication. I'm not that old to have been alive when it was first running. Was the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably
I
first
was-
thing on all of our lists at that
Dude,
point.
I actually literally the last week I've watched about a half a dozen different episodes of the show, and I'm astonished at how well they hold up.
Oh, they're fantastic,
I want to
absolutely.
know this because what's everybody's favorite Twilight Zone episode?
That's a hard pick. You know,
It
it's
is
kind
a
of...
very tough one. Although one of my favorites, I actually got a chance to rewatch very recently, and that was an episode called The Howling Man.
Yes, it's
Season
season 2 or so, I believe.
It's actually season 1.
Season 1 is okay.
Yeah, it's like surprisingly. Yeah, season 1. It's an episode in which a man who is on a walking tour of a remote corner of, I guess it's Europe. They don't even tell you what country, what city, what you know. He is caught in a rainstorm and ends up stumbling into a very creepy old castle that is inhabited by a bunch of hermits. It's called a hermitage. They're not monks, but they are monastic in their level of kind of devotion and focus, and you know, not interacting with the outside world. And they have a man imprisoned in this in their castle, as it were, and. This being a 50-year-old episode, and us having had, 5 or 6 decades of twists, it ends. The denouement isn't exactly super revelatory, only because other people have done similar things since. But watching it, I was actually really struck at how super atmospheric and creepy it was. There's a deliberate element of disorientation to it. This guy stumbles in here fatigued. A lot of it is POVs with the camera tilting just so slightly. And plus, the lead hermit is played by the great John Carradine, and he gets to disgorge the entire story of what's going on with the episode. And I'm literally not going to tell you anything more than that, except that I think it's a wonderful dark fairy tale. Time to take a drink, Jennifer Lovely. Dark fairy tale.
Dark fairy tale. Take
But
another
yeah,
drink.
so that's one of my favorites.
So I will not going into the whole reason of the story, but I wanted to watch that one again recently because I Trapped the Devil is on Hulu, and I watched that.
Yes.
And it kind of
Yes.
related back to that. So I think it was the first one written by Charles Beaumont for the show.
Yeah.
It's been a fantastic episode. And I like a lot of the ones that a lot of people like, Time Enough at Last, and The Surf Man, and I Would Hold Her. I think actually that it's not a horror one, but I think the one I actually like best is one of the the astronauts land on the graveyard planet, and they can't figure out what's going on because everyone's looks like they're mannequins, but they're all essentially stuffed. I think Elegy's name of that one. I'm not entirely sure, but I think that's one of my favorite. There's on the 14th, which will be after this, before this comes out. They're actually showing 3 hours worth of restored Twilight Zone episodes, 6 episodes on the big screen.
Oh, it's a Fathom event.
Yeah, and it's actually covered on A-List, so I got a
right.
ticket. I don't think I'm going to go ultimately because I know it's 3 hours. I just watched season 1 again last month.
Wait. It's actually covered by A-List?
It was when I got my ticket.
Oh.
It might have changed over time. Sometimes if you get in the first day or two before the list comes
Before they
out.
notice.
Before they notice, yeah. But have you guys watched the new one, Jordan Peele?
I don't have.
Yeah, I don't have CBS.
No, and I
Yeah.
refuse to pay more for. I already have cable. I shouldn't have to pay for cable.
Honestly,
I've heard mixed
things.
things.
Middling. Same thing with the new Creep Show. It's kind of...
No, I like the new Creep Show a lot.
I haven't seen it, but I've heard middling things.
I did like the 80s one, and I liked the 2002 one with Forrest Whitaker.
I really liked the Aztec Sacrifice one in the 2002 one. I thought that was really well done. It scared the crap out of me when I was a kid.
Any other favorite episodes you guys want to talk about?
I had to look up the name because I didn't know the name of it. The one with the little boy. It's a Good Life.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Bill Mummy.
Although I'm gonna like, I don't know if it's sacrilegious to say, I enjoyed the Twilight Zone when I was younger, but I was in Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
Oh, nothing wrong with that at all.
You're not going to get any argument.
That was my, and I think it's just because it used to run on Nick at Night, and I was a pretty religious Nick at Night watcher.
Yeah. Get Smart was my favorite show.
I love Get Smart.
What'd you believe?
Missed it by that much. But I was a religious Nick at Night girl, and Alfred Hitchcock Presents was on Nick at Night, and so... and it used to creep me out, and I loved it. But I watched that a lot more than I watched Twilight Zone.
Yeah,
only
Allison
because
too.
Availability. It was a lot more available to me than the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, Allison said she watched a lot of Alfred Hitchcock growing up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But one more note in Twilight Zone before I kind of move on to the various other things we have to talk about. I didn't know that my wife is a middle school teacher, and she shows episodes of the Twilight Zone to kids on when they have a little time or extra day or whatever. Kids eat them up. It's like she says a joke once, like, I'll make you guys watch Twilight Zone. They said, okay. So they started watching them. She's talking about storytelling. She's an English teacher. And then she's like amazed how much they loved them. She's like, I didn't expect a show from 50 years ago, with different production values in black and white to hold up, but the kids devour
The stories are very
Thank you.
timeless.
The story writing
Yeah.
is super strong, and unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, it's very timeless. And the one thing that really made me think of that is one of the other episodes. This will be a quick footnote because there's a lot more I want to talk about other series. But The Monsters Who Do on Maple Street.
Yeah, it's one of the classics.
It's
Yes.
one of the
Yeah.
classics.
Still holds up.
And I assert that if everyone who voted for Donald Trump saw that episode of The Twilight Zone, they would not have been stupid enough to vote for Donald
Yeah,
Trump.
but they don't see just without getting too much politics. Those people don't really see into messages.
But it is.
I was thing the other day when people were talking about Star Trek has always been the role how you people pay attention, and people on the comments boards for the comments underneath that on Facebook are like, it's just a science fiction television show. Stop thinking into things. It's like you're the people who should be realizing this.
No, when blacklisted writers are writing for this TV show, you know damn well they're going to slide in whatever messages they
Yep.
can. And The Monsters Who Do on Maple Street, like a lot of Twilight Zone episodes, has very cogent things to say about human nature in general. And that's probably why kids, even today, respond to those storylines. That and also twists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
What's the twist?
I like that one where they're in the post-apocalyptic world, and there's this god in a cave, and they have to follow its specific
instructions
to stay alive. They're like a little village.
I don't particularly remember this one, to be honest.
I might be the only one who's seen it then.
It's not a,
Is it,
I've
is
seen
it
the
from the
entire
original?
series.
It's from the original.
Okay.
Interesting.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's just one that I saw and moved past. But,
Well, it's about 9 or 10 seasons. So
It's
this
I was
five
gonna say,
seasons.
there's a lot of
Five
material.
seasons.
There's 5.
5 seasons. I have
There's
them all.
still,
I
it's
have them
still
all.
a lot
Still
of
a lot.
material. Yeah, it's still a lot of material.
Related to things around the same time was The Outer Limits.
The Outer Limits,
It's
yeah.
more
Oh, yes.
science fiction than it is
Yeah.
horror, but it definitely they both slide in there. If you have.
There's
Well,
enough. If you're going to consider Twilight Zone, you
Yeah.
have to consider Outer Limits.
I grew up watching the newer Outer Limits because they used to play, I think, on Fox or something.
Yeah, they play at night with Monsters or
Yeah,
USA. I
yeah.
think they
So,
play.
or yeah, maybe it was USA used to play the reruns or something. I grew up watching the reruns of the Outer Limits before I ever saw the original, and I enjoyed the newer version. I enjoyed the newer version.
I only remember
that
one or two
Halloween
episodes
candy
from it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I do remember the few episodes that I saw, really liking them. But again, because I'm kicking it old school, I did see the original Outer Limits on syndication on TV when I was a wee lad, and for me, it was a really jarring series to watch as a kid, because if you watch it now with a grown-up's eyes, that movie is shot like European post-European neorealist cinema. It's shot in like very high contrast black and white. It's shot definitely with an eye towards unusual composition. I mean, you could tell that these guys, I think Conrad Hall was one of the cinematographers that worked on the show. You could tell these guys were really influenced by the French New Wave and by Fellini and stuff. And you can literally see it in how that show is shot. And also in some of the kind of like the existential endings. I mean, Twilight Zone would come up usually with it would neatly wrap things up with a very specific twist. And it would okay, boom, that's the end. With The Outer Limits, you would get much more open-ended endings. You would get stories that would kind of leave you hanging, that wouldn't have some, twist that was wrapped up in a neat little bow at the end. And that was and remains very unusual TV for its time.
Yeah, I need to go back and watch those. So I've been seeing them here and there, but they get linked in a lot of ways because they're same time, simultaneous, have
absolutely.
reissues and became part of pop culture. So I think it's probably actually best if we kind of maybe just went around as we often do for these and kind of mention something, talk about it, and see where conversation goes, kind of just moving around.
Cool.
I know rather than kind of just floating, because otherwise we might just stay in one swath for we talk about Twilight Zone for an hour and a half, So Cody, you've been kind of quiet so far. Is there something favorite TV show, or whether for any time? We talked about youth at the beginning, but it really could be just.
Oh, when I was a
Give us
kid, I
something.
really liked Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Yeah, that's on here.
Yeah.
That's straight up horror.
I mean, you can't. That is like
Surreal.
Holy shit.
Fuck you.
Miriam.
It's weird to think about because I think that if you look at it as an adult, more of it's just a dog's fears, just because it can't rationalize everything that's around it, and it's kind of putting it on there. But yeah, that's such a great show. And the blank thoughts from both of you guys never watched Courage.
I'm
Never even heard of it.
This is where anybody who acknowledges they watched that show, I say fuck you, just because I'm way too old to have seen it or appreciated it.
Check it out. It's a surrealist,
Yeah.
weird ass.
I'm
shit.
intrigued just hearing you guys talk about it. I'm very intrigued, honestly.
Of course, yeah.
Make your eye contact be as easy as candy. I'm okay, am I that
how's
this
that
cat?
biscuit, Cody?
Well, Butterfinger is actually very well done. Kim did a very nice job preparing
I do.
it.
Don't lay a finger. I'm a Butterfinger. But yeah, that was on my list too. Of things
Courage the
that are popping
Cowardly
up.
Dog. Awesome.
Yeah, check it out. I think it's streaming somewhere probably. It's only 30 episodes, I think. Yeah, that kind of went to fizzle.
I've never even
Yeah.
heard of it, so I can't contribute anything to
And
it.
I don't really connect to it besides that. So,
Oh yeah,
I'm,
Campbell, I haven't heard of something you like.
Probably.
Yeah, what's something?
What's something you like that you
What's
can
something
be-
you like?
You can deflate the room by nobody else liking?
So
or
there was
knowing about
a
it.
show on in the 90s that only ran for I think 2 seasons called American Gothic.
Yes! Oh my
Oh, that's a
god,
good
it's
show.
on
Yeah,
my
yeah.
list.
I
That
fucking
show
loved that
is
show.
phenomenal. And I remember watching, especially I think the first season is
Yeah,
great.
the first season's fantastic.
And
Great cast. too.
Absolutely. And what
Great
anchors
cast.
it, what inarguably anchors it, is a character played by Gary Cole.
Yes.
That was
Oh,
the first
yeah.
time
The
I saw
sheriff, I
him.
think,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And I think it was probably the first time anybody had really seen him in anything. He
Yeah, I've
is
never fucking seen
stunning in that movie. If you like Gary Cole as a character actor, where he's kind of, he plays like the
plays-
unlikable office prick in
Yeah.
Office Space,
Or the redneck sometimes.
Exactly.
With the bumbling kind of. Yeah.
He is absolute magic in this show. He is a sheriff in this town.
Someone at the door.
And-
Someone at the door.
And he is
Oh, Sarah Paulson's in that.
Yeah. Oh, it's great.
He's not a good guy, but how
No.
much of a not good guy he is something that is sort of gradually unraveled as the show goes. And he is brilliant. He is so excellent in that show.
And there's a weird supernatural kind of demonic element to it. It's you've got a ghost sister. It's I don't know. I loved that show when I was a kid.
I watched that first run when it was showing.
I watched the
on
first
CBS.
run. Yeah, I watched the
CBS.
first run.
Yeah,
I was a
it's just-
kid, but I watched the first run.
Some of us were a little older.
But my brother and I used to watch it together, and it was genuinely creepy.
Yeah.
I remembered existing. I never saw it. But go ahead.
Oh, I apologize. Strange Bedfellows alert. The show was created and executive produced by none other than Sean Cassidy, the teen idol.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. He
That's
was a key creative figure in that
Bonkers.
show.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
Yeah,
interesting.
he's been looking at the IMDb now. He's an executive producer and creator for a lot of different things. Like he kind of gets around a lot for that.
Yeah, but that I think was like kind of the first one that kind of really established
his first
him
one, yeah.
as someone who could be a showrunner and had some kind of unique ideas. And it's really good. I mean, I haven't seen the second season in a long time, and I think it kind of loses its way a little. And it did end up getting canceled after that.
Yeah. And I
but-
think part of it too, it got a little sporadic at the airing of it too.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
a lot of I think a lot of those kinds of shows, because it was just post, maybe a couple years post Twin Peaks.
Yeah, it's like
Yes, it was.
I linking it in my head to Twin Peaks of like
So
the post Twin Peaks.
It's kind of
weird
writing
TV
the
shows.
weird TV show of Twin Peaks, but I think
Yeah.
much like Twin Peaks, it had this first season, and then it didn't fully know what it wanted to do in its second season,
Yeah.
and you can see it. You can see that it was struggling a little. But I haven't rewatched the series in a long time. It's on my list of ones I want to revisit now as an adult, because I think the last time I watched it was probably as a teenager when it was in syndication.
Yeah, it came on 95, so it came on when we were young teens.
Yeah, and I think I saw, or maybe when I was in college. There was a network that syndicated it for a while.
I have to chime in.
Fuck you, Cody.
I
Fuck
was-
you, Cody. Fuck you,
I was
Cody.
Negative
Two-
3 or whatever. Yeah.
I was too.
You were an egg.
joking.
But that's that's a show I've wanted
Boy,
to check out.
the air
It's
just kind of
definitely
keeps on
my-
leaving the room randomly at certain points.
It happens.
And it's my impulse to want to fill the air with something. So,
Wine?
Yeah, with wine. Yes, let's fill the air with wine.
But,
Done.
So-
I think it's funny, like in response to that, like you think Twin Peaks and what come after Twin Peaks, you got the show that took the horror and ran with it was like American Gothic, and one show that took the weird neighbors thing and ran with it was Northern Exposure.
Yeah.
You
my
take
God.
all those
But with
together.
the like very quirky
Yeah.
side, because that side of it's completely devoid of horror. It's
Yeah.
it's almost funny to me because Grant Goodeve was in the show. Grant Goodeve is a local actor.
He was also an
And-
8 is enough.
Yeah, he was an 8 is
70s.
enough. Well, so I went to school with his daughter. He was my softball coach. So it was really trippy when I was younger.
Whoa.
Because I'd see him on TV, and my parents loved Northern Exposure.
Yeah,
And
my
I'd
mom
go to
watched
baseball
all that.
practice, and I'd be like, I just watched you on TV, Mr. Goodeve. And he would laugh, and he'd laugh, and yeah. So, yeah, no, I was in the same grade as his daughter.
Wow.
So,
Crazy.
that's my-
Small world. I
Small
tell ya.
world. Yeah, weird.
So okay, American Gothic. Okay, so that was you. Okay,
American Gothic, yeah.
so yeah, one of the shows that was again betraying my hideously ancient vintage here. One of my favorite shows as I was in grade school. It only lasted, I think, for one season, maybe 2 seasons. But it was a massive influence on a lot of TV shows that you like, including and most especially The X-Files. That would be Kolchak, the Night Stalker from 1975, I want to say. It started out as 2 really good TV movies, the first of which, The Night Stalker, ended up being the highest rated TV movie in history up until that time. And it introduced a character named Carl Kolchak, who was a hard-nosed investigative reporter in a seersucker suit and a straw hat, who would investigate all of these strange phenomena from a hard-nosed, pragmatic standpoint, replete with great, almost film noir narration, play-by-play on cases, and he would stumble into these bizarre situations. He would stumble into a case where the killings, as in the pilot film Night Stalker, were by a vampire. He would stumble into a case where a werewolf was massacring people in New Orleans and that sort of thing. The show ran hot and cold. Sometimes it was creepy as all get out. Sometimes the monsters were patently ridiculous and laughable, as is wont to happen with 70s monsters.
Yeah.
But the thing that consistently struck me is I thought that the closing few minutes of every single episode of that show were terrifying. Because every single episode of The Night Stalker would end with Carl Kolchak typing out on an ancient, battered manual typewriter what was left of his story, his own testimony relating to an adventure that he had been on. And he would always be in the umpteenth floor of his newspaper office, completely alone, after hours, with all of the lights dimmed except for the light that was shining on him and his typewriter as he typed out the last bits of the story. And every single ending, his monologue would always strongly infer that whatever it was that had menaced him and that had caused all of this terror was still out there somewhere. And that scared me to the core.
The truth is out there, Tony.
And yes,
that show definitely was a huge influence, right?
yeah.
there.
When I
Yeah.
first saw when I saw previews of the X-Files before it started, I thought, okay, great. Someone learned that you could rip off Kolchak the Night Stalker, and it's like
Wait 20 years and you
It's
can
a-
do it again.
it's a good show to rip off. Yeah, Darren McGavin, one for the ages, just a
The old
fucking
man.
terrific. And you will never see an actor like that at the center of a TV show ever again, because everybody wants cut GQ models and perfectly chiseled anonymous supermodels to be playing the leads in their shows now. So
So didn't they
you'll never
remake
see-
that with a...
They
Yeah,
remade
yeah,
it with
they
a
made
very
it,
pretty
yeah.
chiseled guy. I think it was.
But it didn't last long.
Oh, of course not.
2005. I was actually...
Oh,
It
God.
was-
I
It was
forgot
longer
that.
than... I thought it was recent. Now I'm looking, nope, it's
No, it was
14
like
years
14
ago.
years
Stuart
ago.
Townsend.
Night
Yeah.
Stalker.
I was like, who
Yeah.
is it? It was
It was the bad, the thought.
It was, yeah.
And it was also executive produced and show ran by Frank Spotnitz, who was on the X-Files.
Oh.
And it was after the X-Files had started, of course. So
And the
interesting.
I haven't seen the newest version of the X-Files, but the first the revisited series, that episode with Murray from Flight of the Conchords game. I think it was the name.
Oh,
I
yeah,
love him. As a were-beast, whatever, but were-human. But he's dressed as Kolchak when he's Kojak. Sorry, when he's alive. When he's Kolchak. Sorry, when he's I threw between the two. It's Tyler Savalas. When he's a
Who
human,
loves you, baby?
he's dressed as Kojak, which is cool.
But yeah, great show. Really worth seeking out, especially the first two pilot films, which are basically made for TV movies, and they're both about 90 minutes long, are The Night Stalker and The Night Strangler, which is partially shot
And
In
yeah.
that-
in
Well-
the Seattle Underground.
It's shot in the Seattle Underground.
Give us the scoop.
Shot in the Seattle Underground.
There's air quotes
It's
there.
set in the Seattle.
It's set in the Seattle Underground. Yeah.
All right, so my revivalist Blarney is.
I really do want to watch that show because I've gotten so many fucking recommendations on it.
Yeah,
It's so hard to commit to a TV show
This
because it's
is-
not like a movie where it's like, okay, an hour and a half. It's
at least
like no.
something that's 30 years old has already ended. Yeah, you got 20 episodes. You just blast through it in a couple days, and
Yeah.
not like something now which is continuing.
Yeah.
It's like, as soon as I get caught up, there's 15 more seasons of Supernatural.
Full disclosure: one of the reasons why I may not be as in this topic as others is because I really do have a difficult time, committing to hours and hours of a TV show, binge watching. It's I just don't
Hell
have
yeah,
enough time in the
brother.
day.
I was a TV kid. Like for me, I grew up, and I don't know if this was maybe being a kid and early teenager in the 90s, but like, I grew up with TV, and we couldn't binge watch stuff yet because we didn't have, but like the ritual of a show that you're invested in and watching it every week
Oh,
and
yeah.
recording it on the VCR to watch it.
Dad, push record at 2 o'clock.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I remember because my mom knew how to set the VCR just by pressing the button, and my dad taught my brother and I how to, like, set it so we could record things. And I remember getting a VCR for my room, and it had up to 6 slots. I could record up
Oh.
to 6 things ahead of time, and
Holy
some of them
cow.
you could set for weekly record.
Oh, Shit.
So, like, I have this, and you could set, if you watch soap operas, you could set a Monday to Friday record, which I did.
So you can get your stories.
So I can get
get
my
her stories.
stories. Yeah,
Fucking rich kid.
I was a Days of Our Lives in a General Hospital kid. I started watching
Dude,
that
Days
as
of
a
Our Lives,
teenager. Yeah.
Patch.
And when Marlena was possessed by the devil, Toad's
Dude,
Horror.
these were
Tell me
Toad's
about it.
Horror.
Tell me about it.
But no, I was a TV kid. Like, I loved television, and I think part of it is that, and I don't know if this is also the performer in me, but I like really investing in a longer chunk of characters' lives. And so a long-running series, especially, you get really invested in these characters because you're watching them over, 4, 5, 6 years.
Yeah.
And something for me is I very much similar. It's like I was a TV guy till I was like 18.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of fell out of it. And, with the internet coming in and, finally getting a girlfriend, that kind of took up time. And the next thing I know is like, I've got one show I really watch now. It's The Walking Dead.
Well, and it's funny because I had fallen away from a lot of TV the last few years, partially because it became too much of a commitment. But this fall, I've committed to a few TV shows where I'm actually watching it weekly, like I used to. And I have to say, I've gotten a lot of enjoyment out of it. Out of not binge watching, but actually following something week to week.
You're not the only person who has told me this, and also I think showrunners and Netflix programmers, among others, are seeming to get that people like that sense of anticipation.
Yeah.
And I think it brings back a certain element of making that TV show, in this case, a little bit more precious, because you're not having it all dumped in a big supersized, container into your lap. You're actually absorbing the first one that you see and waiting for the next one. And I think that's a good strategy. And I think it increases, again, it increases how precious watching that show feels.
And it's become a nice way, I don't know, like if I get home from work, rehearsals, whatever, and I'm tired, and I'm like, I just need something to unwind a little bit. I'm going to put on last night's episode of, I don't know, Prodigal Son, which I started watching, and it's not good, but I can't stop watching it.
Fair enough.
Well, no, it's because Michael Sheen I watch do literally anything.
He's amazing.
And he's amazing, and he chews scenery like the best of them. It's not that the show's good, but I can't stop watching it, so I keep watching it.
Hey,
but
some TV shows are an 8-course nutritious meal, and some are just a bag of greasy, tasty-ass potato chips.
It's a nice way to unwind.
But there's a lot of stuff streaming now that's fantastic, and then of course streaming is easy to dump and binge. But some of the Netflix and Hulu, particularly Hulu, and Amazon a little bit with Creepshow, are looking at
Doing it week to week,
again. Like
Hulu's been doing that
or
for a while now.
putting the first 3, then kind of going from there. I need to catch up in Castle Rock, which I didn't. First season thought was kind of uneven. I've heard the new season's amazing.
I'm wondering if
I
I can
don't
just
even-
start at season 2.
Probably, I think so. I
that.
think it's separate without having to pull back in the first season. The first season wrapped itself up. Called it a day. I think this new season is its own thing. I haven't started it yet.
Okay.
But Creepshow's coming out week to week. Now it's done.
Yep.
Lights of Feather, they split into 2 parts. Same thing with
Oh, I
Netflix
fucking
and
love Lights of Feather.
yeah, that was great. We're gonna play that. Seth, you're amazing.
I well, and that was one that I ended up then, like, when the new seasons came out, I just plowed through. Yeah.
I waited till all of season 2 was out, and I watched it all
And
in 2 days.
kept messaging Seth, being like, "You bastard!"
Yeah, they see what he posted today. It's like people posting about. It's like you maybe get connected, then you kill them.
I know, no. There would be times I'd be like mid watching an episode, and I'd take a picture and be like, "Why did you do this?"
But that's a great show. Like
it's a fun show. It's such
if
a
you've
good
been
time.
reticent about watching Lights of Feather because you think it might be like a teen-based show, it's fantastic. It's made for everyone. It's
fun. It's really fun too. Like, and I mean, this is a compliment, but like, something I always enjoy about Seth's work is that he really captures teenage girls very well.
he captures. Where's he put him in the basement?
He puts them in the basement. No, but like, I'm particularly harsh of criticism for when men are writing, men are creating female characters, and he gets teenage girls in a way that I find pretty remarkable. So
Let the record state that Seth Sherwood knows his teenage girls.
Well, I'm gonna send him a message. Today today's podcast. Seth captures teenage girls really well.
oh, dear.
I think it boils down to cardio. I'm always seeing her on the treadmill.
And they're running full speed across the convention hotel.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the rules is
You say he's running from
cardio,
something, but
cardio. Anyway.
But that brings into Netflix and Hulu and a new rise in streaming and horror, which is working really well. Stranger Things, people are really latching on to horror and streaming, maybe because it's maybe our bubble. But it seems like a lot of these have actually reached the major, I don't know
Stranger Things is
pop
culture.
But that one obviously. But
The Simpsons
The Haunting of
spoofed it,
Hill
you know?
House, how much is that all horror? Is that all our people, or is it really everybody?
It's civilians.
Because I had civilians. I always get a little annoyed when civilians ask me if I've watched, civilians who know I'm a horror person. Like, have you heard of this show, Haunting of Hill House? I'm like, fuck you, fuck you. And yes, I have, and I loved it. But there's a lot of these things that have crossed. I mean, horror has become pop culture in general. And, but it comes back to geek culture becoming cool.
Yes.
And
It's
becoming
okay
mainstream.
to like horror again.
It's okay to like genre. It's okay to like sci-fi. It's okay to like comic books. It's okay to like horror.
Shit, back in Tony's day, you said you liked Bruno Mattei. They would chase you down and fucking murder you.
Get your rats right here.
Hey, this guy likes Bruno Mattei,
Riff Tracks
see?
just put out Rats Night of Terror as one of the Riff Tracks.
Oh, I want to watch that. I want to watch that.
Who needs a riff? Hey, a riff tracks is numbingly redundant for a Bruno Mattei.
Exactly.
I am okay. Represent, my friend.
Fuck yeah!
High
I
five.
legit cried at the end of his last movie, the one with the alien baby sucking machines.
Yes.
Okay.
That would be Zombies the beginning.
Yeah, Zombies the beginning.
Oh, the one you
because
posted on your day 2.
They posted.
yeah.
It's on day 67 of my very non-consecutive days of horror, which I finished.
I was going to say, you finished what, 2017? 2016?
2017.
2017!
But they posted like a
Yeah.
Ciao
Good for you.
Bruno, and it's a clip of him, right before the end. I'm like, I'm gonna miss that crazy son of a bitch.
But we're diverging to. Now, if there's a guy who should have been a showrunner.
Oh
now,
my god!
Can you imagine a Bruno Mattei TV series?
We have an idea. Just do it.
He's like, fuck it. We're just gonna rip everything off. Like one episode could be Twilight Zone, one episode could be Outer Limits,
Then goes into Stranger Things for an episode.
and then there's a Leave It to Beaver where Peter Bark is like there.
Oh, dude, I would
watch
buy
that.
into that shit.
I'd watch that.
But maybe we should talk about real TV
But
shows.
talking about, if we're just still mentioning a little streaming there, if you guys haven't seen the Castlevania TV show, 2 seasons so far on Netflix, it's really well done as well.
I just can't get into anime. It's anime in my voice.
I like Sailor Moon.
I like. Well, we're gonna. No, let's do an episode.
That's
of
a whole
anime.
other episode.
I don't know a lot about anime. So
another-
Mostly that I like Sailor Moon. That's my experience with anime.
Let's see. I'm thinking of another TV show that
I have
an
an insane list. So
I've got one.
Yeah, I got a giant list here. I'll go over since I know it kind of has been thrown out, but I want to mention, going back to my youth, as a lot of these are talking about, like when I was a kid. But Real Ghostbusters is probably one of my first major fandoms. I know nobody like Ghostbusters besides me in this room, but the Real Ghostbusters was a great show. It was a great show, a wonderful gateway to a lot of other horror stuff. So they brought in a lot of myths and legends and cultures from all around the world into the show, and a lot of great writers of comics like J. Michael Straczynski, who did
Babylon 5.
Babylon 5.
I heard the series finale was the biggest myth of them all.
Yeah. And he decided there's not a lot of women in that. This game was mouthing. Woman mouthing, no.
Well, no, they had a
Janine,
secretary
right, yeah.
that was very...
She got to be a Ghostbuster as things went along.
Hey, Annie Potts rocked. I will not dispute that.
But the show
not
was
the TV show.
a really well written. A lot of effort was put in to make it a good show. They weren't when the commentaries on the DVDs, they were talking about how they weren't just trying to make some cheapy animated show, toss it out there for the kids. They put a lot of effort to make it accessible for all ages, and put a lot of work into it to make actual good stories and good writing. Kim's giving me a blank look.
Yeah.
It is. It is a great show.
I used to watch it when I was a kid because it was on Saturday morning cartoons. I liked the Addams Family cartoon better because I liked
didn't watch
Wednesday
that.
Addams. and
Dude,
Morticia.
Addams Family cartoon was legit.
Addams Family cartoon was legit. No, I mean, I didn't dislike Ghostbusters. I was just never, again, I wasn't into it because there was no characters that I was like, I could, like when I was...
Wow, Bill Murray's womanizing pervert.
Yeah, well,
I identify with that.
When I was a kid,
You
I
don't?
used to play a lot of pretend games, and Ghostbusters wasn't a game I could play a character in.
Fair enough,
Other
fair
than
enough.
the secretary, and you know what? There was enough of those. So
Hey, Kim, can you file these reports?
But you did touch on another TV show, another property that just has multiple different television shows, is the Addams Family.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The
major-
original's great.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna throw the
I like
Munsters
the-
in with this.
Yeah,
Oh, I like
they're,
the
they're
Munsters.
incredibly linked, same time,
Yeah.
same
The fucking
outlook.
Munsters, I love to fucking death. I watched every fucking one of those with my mom, all 30, 37 of them, and that is one of my favorite,
show.
favorite,
There's 70 episodes.
favorite, whatever, man.
The reason I was saying, actually I mentioned this, I was at Half Price Books the other day, and they had the whole set on clearance on like the back area. Like, so I'm like, oh cool, I picked it up, I put it down for half a second. It's like, oh, what's that over there? Tie my shoe or something like that. Dude next to me, he's like, ooh, grabbed it and walked away. I'm like, what the fuck, man?
That's somehow. I actually got into a very lengthy Facebook discourse about how I thought Lily Munster was a better mom than Carol Brady in the Brady Bunch.
Fuck yeah.
And I would readily argue with
I was gonna
that.
say, yeah. Morticia
I
was legit.
I would put it, and I would say that really the Munsters were a really good family.
Yeah.
Just, like they weren't like fucking Leave It to Beaver, where it's like, oh, I'm just going to sit in the corner. It's like Lily actually had a real role in the
Yeah.
family. Everybody had a role.
Well, and the thing is, that woman had to hold everybody's shit together. I mean, her husband was a Class A man-boy imbecile, and she basically had to bail his ass out God knows how many
and
times.
Grandpa, seriously probably did some weird shit in that basement.
Grandpa almost started a thermonuclear war more than once, and who pulled his ass out of it?
Lily.
Lily.
So yeah, the Munsters absolutely.
Munsters.
And the
Great.
original Addams Family. It's,
Yeah, I'm more of an Addams Family person than Monsters, but yeah,
get
they're
the
both
fuck
good.
out of here, Bob.
And the new movie's actually pretty solid too.
And, I haven't seen that, but I'll take your word for it.
fair enough.
I'm
But,
okay, Bob, watching that on my behalf.
So in other words, is it neat, sweet, petite?
At what point do I get to tell you all to get the fuck out?
I know it's 9:45, so normally about an hour from now, but you could do it
Damn.
now.
Yeah, you
I don't know. I haven't finished my list, so.
I know, neither have I.
But
That is
like
young,
someone else,
my friend.
yeah. So anyone want to throw out whoever's next? I have Gurren, I guess to be you, Cody.
All right. Tales from the Dark Side.
Yeah, that's on here too.
I particularly like the Christmas one, where the family is being so horrible to those kids, and they're like, "Oh, the Grither is gonna get you." Have you ever seen the Grither one?
How did
No.
I have?
It's basically this thing where they make it out to be like this fucking Krampus-like character. It's the Grither, and he's gonna fuck with you on Christmas because you're naughty little shits. And it's a really good Christmas-themed one. And they also do a really good. There's a couple. The one where the lawyer realizes he's going to go to hell, and hell's a real place, and he doesn't want to go there. So he tries the most half-assed way to be as good as he can before he eventually... I'm going to spoil this because it's a
Yeah,
35-year-old series.
For the 80s.
And then, lawyer dies. And then, he's like, you know what? Okay, I'll be one of your minions, Satan. Let's talk stock options. I think really, honestly, it really has a lot of good stuff, and the movie was good too.
Yeah, I just want to. I watched a lot with my mom. It's one of our weekly shows, and produced by Romero. A lot of great writers attached to it. A lot of Stephen King episodes, a couple Clive Barker ones. Various big people of the industry worked on the show. So,
It was a starting point for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
but then you ain't have to link that into Tales from the Crypt. Came out a couple years
Oh,
ago.
Yeah.
So you're talking about Tales of the like a whole bunch of lists here. Everything isn't a kids movie on here. A lot of them are anthologies that I have listed here.
Yeah.
But
Well, I
I
think
think
horror
What's that
shows
horror?
Yeah.
Or, I
work
mean,
really well.
it's campfire stories.
And because I think it's hard to tell a horror narrative for a very long
Yeah.
time because eventually it weakens and it grows
If you
old.
use Slasher,
Yeah.
the movie, the show.
And it's like I think that's why it works so well.
I think unless you're doing, because a lot of the longer running ones were ones that I think you're kind of procedural style.
Yeah.
Because then you have your monster of the week. Or I mean, even something like Forever Night, which was basically a vampire procedural for the
Yeah.
most part. It was a cop show where the lead cop happened to be a vampire.
Yeah.
So you can get away with it if you put it in another
Like
Kelsey
Dark
did
Shadows,
another genre.
Yeah.
Dark Shadows is a soap opera with supernatural
with
stuff.
supernatural
Eventually,
stuff.
the first several years didn't.
But otherwise, it's really. I mean, I think I'm looking at you at the current season, American Horror Story, 1984, which I've been watching and I've been enjoying mostly because I like the cast. I'll watch Billie Lourd do pretty much anything.
Yeah, she's amazing.
But it's. I hit a point like 2 episodes ago where I was like, "This is the longest fucking slasher movie ever, and it's going nowhere."
All 3 seasons
And
of slasher.
But you see them
Cut out so much of it,
struggling to where it's funny because I thought the first 2 seasons of the Scream reboot were really solid, and part of that was that each one kind of had its own mystery. But it's hard for where a lot of horror. Part of it is trying to solve. Find peace for the ghost or figure out who the murderer is or something. It's a lot to sustain over seasons and seasons and seasons unless you either make an anthology with every season being self-contained or anthology episode-wise.
And even the anthologies, I will say this about American Horror Story. Ryan, what's his face? Murphy?
Ryan Murphy.
Yeah.
He does not know how to write a fucking ending.
No.
He cannot stick the landing.
Him and Stephen King have that in common.
Yeah, I mean, dude
a lot of
cannot
horror.
stick the landing ever. Every time he tries to stick the landing, he falls flat on his fucking face.
Ryan
Did you do on
Murphy's-
episode 8 or so where it kind of is like, and we're done. Okay.
What?
Or they'll get to a point where it's like, okay, this can really have a good conclusion, and then he rushes, but it's like an episode left. He's like, okay, we've got like 4 or 5 more episodes worth of stuff where he drags, and there's
Yeah.
episodes that are no point.
His pacing is really off. And his visuals, I think, are usually really interesting. He has a good sense of comedy. But because even his non-horror shows have struggled with this. Like Glee struggled with it. Nip Tuck struggled with it. He doesn't... He's kind of like M. Night Shyamalan. Like, he's got good ideas. He needs somebody else to come in and help.
Yeah, them giving him carte blanche on everything really fucked up.
It's not a good look. I will say a series that for me was probably the thing that scared me the most as a kid. Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah, that's on.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
That was by far the thing that scared me more than anything else.
There's something about that real prosaic, procedural, pseudo-journalistic element to Unsolved Mysteries that was just freaky as all get.
Well, they were
Dude
true.
disappeared.
They were true stories.
Absolutely.
Where the fuck did he go? Was it aliens? Was it a serial killer? We don't fucking know. He's
Robert
no
Stack is sitting up there stoically telling you about everything.
one that really
voice.
worked for me was Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction.
Jonathan,
Oh,
is that the one Jonathan
yeah.
Frakes?
Jonathan Frakes.
I love Jonathan Frakes and his wife on General Hospital, Jeannie.
Jeannie Francis? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
like,
they're adorable.
That kind of
That was
like,
kind of like the Unsolved Mysteries of your decade.
pretty much. I like
Where's
the
that? Like 2 years ago?
Yeah,
probably. I like the idea of presenting things from the real world in that supernatural sense, or giving it that possibility. It's like, yeah, was that guy probably taken by ghosts or aliens? Probably not. But I mean,
could
you
he
could
have
still make that case. The History Channel makes an entire like ancient
Yeah.
aliens, ancient Hitler
Guy
aliens.
with the weird hair.
Yeah, it's got
How
weirder
does-
weird over time.
How I'm like,
I don't think they really care anymore.
I know, but I'm
They
like,
stopped
the
caring.
dude makes money doing that. How can I make money doing that?
Well, it's
That's what I
like
wanna
you
know.
can make a whole living on the convention circle by doing this one show and the right movie and the right character, and you get.
I want to do that. I'd like to do that. Sign me up.
But it's the thing with both of those, like, I always like the reenactments, even though as cheesy as they are, which kind of like that's why I haven't revisited Unsolved Mysteries, because I'm like, oh, this is really bad acting and it pulled me right out. What scared the shit out of me as a kid is it gonna be like, oh, I see a fog machine and a community theater actor.
I will say, because I've been rewatching some of the segments for research purposes, some of the true crime stuff I've been covering. If Unsolved Mysteries covered it, I'll watch what they covered. And the reenactments are killing me, man. The reenactments,
Yeah,
like,
that's why I
I
keep
don't
watching
remember
it.
them being that bad when I was a kid. When I was a kid, they were scary. And now I'm just like, oh.
There's something about, I think, the fact that they are so crude and so like not effective on a conventional level. Actually, when you're younger, it makes it, I think it kind of amplifies the fear factor because it feels off kilter and wrong.
Yeah.
And also because it's usually just incompetently delivered enough to where you are filling in the blanks if you're an imaginative kid. You know, you're filling in the things that you may not be seeing in this not so great reenactment.
I wonder if, like, the fact that I remember the ghost ones more. I do the true crime ones. If, like, because there's less acting maybe in the ghost ones.
Well, and see, the true crime ones were the ones that scared me.
Yeah, so
because again, they were true. They were true stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, Mindhunter. Can we consider that a horror?
With the new show.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, that's pushing it to consider it horror. It for me is more procedural. I guess it's horror the same way that like Criminal Minds is horror.
And I guess you could try to make that case. I don't know.
You could make the argument in that it's like real life horror, but it's not designed to be genre. It's designed to.
Somebody from work said I sound like Ed Kemper from that show.
I haven't watched it, so I can't tell you.
Have you ever seen interviews with the real Ed Kemper? Mm-hmm. It's trippy. No, I don't know. Like, you have his tone of voice. He does something with his voice that's his cadence is very specific. I sort of see what they're saying, but
I know. I'm like, honestly, I'm not creeped out. I'm a little like oddly flattered.
Well, he's very well spoken. Yeah. He's exceptionally well spoken. Oh,
he just happened to kill a fuckload of people.
He did, including his mom. But it sounds like she had it coming. A cat wants to be fed.
Oh, fair enough.
Wow.
Tony, do you have a title you like to toss up?
While Kim is making sure that Tilly gets nourished here, one that I want to mention because it was I was a huge fan of it, and I thought the first 5 or 6 seasons of it were amazing, and I think it just really made a strong impression on me was Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Wait, you can't talk about Buffy when I'm not at the table.
We'll be back in a second. We can talk before you get here.
Table Buffy.
Yeah, we could talk. Oh, I can mention. I think for me it was interesting. I had seen the original movie, and when I heard they were making a TV show out of it, I mean, I liked the movie okay, but I thought, yeah,
a lot of studio force rewrites.
Yeah, is it? Yeah, what's it gonna do? What's it gonna be? And the first season was okay. And then for me, it just seemed to rocket when it hit the second season. It felt like they had all the characters had gelled. It felt like high school, and I was close enough to high school.
Stop talking about Buffy.
Stop talking about Buffy. The show that shall not be named. The show that shall not be named with the character that shall not be named.
Fuck you. It's a show that I have a lot to say about. Don't talk about when I can't talk about it.
I'll say that Doug Jones in that one, the Gentleman episode.
Gentleman.
Oh, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. That is terrifying.
Hush. The name of the episode is Hush.
And that's also what Kim's telling us when we try to talk about Buffy the Vampire Slayer with
You can't wait until your one lady leaves the table to talk about one of the definitive female shows.
I don't have a lot to bust out here because I see dip in terms of
Unfortunately,
television.
Kim, we've actually reached our quota for Buffy talk. We're going to have to... Ow, fuck, that hit me right in the ear.
So you need to say fuck you, Kim, and then she says fuck you, Cody. And then the universe is in harmony.
Well, thank you for that wonderful Buffy discussion. Now we're going to move on to Mystery Science Theater.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Yeah, so many great moments in that show, I think. Please, your perspective, Miss Kim. I was saying that I thought the show really hit its stride. It took a season for it to hit its stride.
Oh, yeah. The second season is by far when it starts to really get kind of comfortable with itself.
Yes, totally.
When it moved away from all the monsters of the week into other things.
Exactly. The first season it was...
Even season 2 had a lot of that, too.
God damn it.
Yeah. But I think what happened in season 2 is you started seeing character arcs and you started seeing how clearly defined the characters were. And I also think it's important to note, and I think showrunners, especially for networks, need to keep this in mind. If you give a show a chance to grow, it gets really fucking good, and people will follow it. And that's exactly what happened with Buffy.
And that's something I look at Parks and Rec and I look at The Office, and those for me are two other examples of shows where their first season is pretty weak, but their second season is where they really find their footing.
Yeah.
But no, for Buffy, for me, like, this was a show that I used to watch with my girlfriends. Like, the teenage girls, we'd sit around taping the episodes and getting together and watching them each week, because it was a show that and Charmed were like two of the kind of late 90s, early 2000s girl power shows, and Joss Whedon has some
everything from after
Joss Whedon is Joss Whedon.
We'll just leave Joss Whedon at Joss Whedon.
I mean, it's and there's some things now that looking back on the show are a little problematic, of course, but at the time, having a girl character who also could be. One of the things I think Buffy was always a big deal too is that she was a girly girl. She was a valley girl who was also a vampire slayer. She could be tough, but she could also like shoes. And that wasn't always the message we were getting. I think that it's okay to be who you are. If that's the nerd girl who then becomes like a badass witch, if you're the girly girl who becomes a vampire slayer, if you're the nerd boy who might not have magical powers but still helps with everything and still saves the world a bunch, or
even what's the character's name? Charisma Carpenter's character, Cordelia. Cordelia ended up like being what would normally be a vapid stereotype became a great character, especially when she was an angel. Yeah, and then even like Anya was.
Oh, I always loved Anya, and
her reaction to the body was I don't even cry if I think about it.
Every time I watch that episode, I bawl. I just bawl.
There are like a few episodes of that show that I think are just some of the best television. Period. One of them is I think Hush. Which is I'm goosebumping just thinking about that show. It is so utterly chilling.
Well, and one of the first shows on, I mean, that had not just a lesbian relationship, but had a lesbian kiss, and that was a big deal at the time.
God, that's right.
Mm-hmm. And Willow and Tara. That, I mean, again,
and it wasn't sensationalized.
It wasn't sensationalized. It was in a moment where it made sense.
Yep.
Well, and I also appreciated too, like
the whole relationship itself too. Besides fridging her a little bit later on, but that's a whole different thing. That's a whole issue. A whole other thing. Yeah.
I was also. I mean, I was never an Angel person. I was a Spike person. I liked Spike. I found him to be a more interesting character, and I liked the whole. I don't know. He was very charismatic.
I would agree.
He's a character you want to root for a little bit more. The brooding got old, but. It was a show that was also not afraid to try things, like a musical episode.
Yeah.
And I fucking love that episode.
Well, and
awesome.
And the body, that episode right there.
Oh.
That episode is such a profound meditation on mortality.
And the lack of score.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It took me about halfway through the episode to realize that there was no score.
And how unsettling it was.
Yeah.
To be watching something in silence and to realize how much you kind of depend, because it makes it feel so much more real. There's nothing to be.
There's nothing to emotionally manipulate you one way or another.
Yeah.
There's no false sense of like hope or elevation that you would get from a string surge or something like that. It's just the naked truth.
Yeah, it's great in the simplicity of like when you hear Buffy say "mommy," and it's like this breaks, and of course Anya's speech in that, and the fact that
speech kills me.
That Buffy's mom died of not a supernatural monster, not that it was a cancer, and thought she was clear, and then it takes her out. That's happened in my own life. My mom was cleared, and then it came back, and it came back, and it came back.
I think so it's like a really big reaction or something. But
it was in relation to everything.
Once you have something and you think you've passed it, and then it's life. It was Buffy for me is like when we talked about the movies that like define us. Mm-hmm. It's a TV show that defined me and still is. And it was also one where I appreciated a lot of the wittiness in the writing.
Oh, totally. It was one of the most like trenchantly witty shows with just enough of a pinch of self-awareness to make you feel smart and in on the joke, and yet not so much that you feel like its tongue is jammed irreparably in its cheek. It just really struck at its best, which was quite a few seasons. It struck that balance.
Some of the plotting. You look at the episode. I think it was the end of season 4 when there's the elaborate dream sequences, and there's things that they're touching on that happen over the next couple seasons. And you see little undertones of things, little suggestions of things from earlier seasons that foreshadow things that then happen 2 or 3 seasons later. And I appreciate that because it's something I think a lot of shows want to do, but most shows don't plan that.
Yep. The DC rather than MCU route. You know,
Yeah,
like, just shove
exactly.
it all front and like, can you pick up my hints? It's like, yes, we can see it pretty damn clear.
And it's also why I give credit to shows that plot out their, I'm going to do a show that's 4 seasons long because this is the story I'm telling in those 4 seasons, as opposed to, let's just see if we can keep this going. Let's just see if we can keep this going.
If you're talking about Buffy, that maybe relates to a
some.
similar show that did plot itself out, then they gave them dump trucks full of money, and 10 years later, we're still going on with Supernatural.
Yeah.
Which had a 5-season arc, and that also had a kind of weird first season until they got their footing. And I thought the characters were, the main actors were awful in season 1. Season 2, they came back and like, you guys are so much better. What happened? Like, I don't know, like coaches or whatever. But in season 2, I thought it really picked up. Season 5 was a great wrap up, and then it's like, well, here's a bunch of money. And now we're at season, 15?
And it is actually the fun. Well, and to be fair, I watched the first couple episodes and I couldn't get into it. I never returned to it. But I know rabid Supernatural fans.
I quit in season 8 or so. I thought it was really fucking awful.
I
And I heard it
never
got
gave
better.
it a
It kind of
chance.
goes and goes.
I never gave it a chance. So.
I always think of him as the guy from Gilmore Girls, too, so that might not help.
Where he plays Dean when he's Sam. It's
Yeah.
weird.
But it is a show that's, I mean, again, it has a rabid fan base, and it's survived for a very long time. And
it also takes itself meta with tongue-in-cheek at certain degrees.
I think when shows get to a certain season, you have to.
Yeah.
Because at that point, because part of it is just one big wink to the fans. That's the only
Yeah.
reason the show is still on. When you're 15 seasons in, the only reason you're still on is because you have a fairly loyal fan base.
Yes.
But there was a period of time in the early 2000s. I think we were getting the late 90s, early 2000s. We were getting a lot of these kind of teen supernatural shows because we had Supernatural, Buffy, Teen Wolf,
Came out
Charmed,
later, yeah.
and then a little later the Vampire Diaries.
Yeah.
And,
I think Teen Wolf is around the time as Vampire Diaries.
Yeah, that was a little bit more mid early 2000s,
2000, yeah.
2005, 2006. I don't know.
The CW horror.
But the CW was really running that. I mean, it was the Twilight era too.
Oh,
You were starting to get into the Twilight time with all these vampire things, and I think a lot of the network wanted to kind of capitalize on the teen girl. I mean, I hate to generalize, but
Yeah.
that was the market primarily.
Paranormal romance.
Yeah, no.
My boyfriend's brooding
Take
and he's
me, Edward.
Which I mean, say what
It's a Lovecraftian monster. But
say
he
what
loves
you
me.
will about it, though. I and I'm somebody who rips on Twilight, but also if somebody likes Twilight, I'm like, you know what?
You do you,
You
brother.
do you. Like,
And
I
hopefully
read
it
the
leads
books,
you into the actual genre, you know?
or it doesn't.
Yeah, but
and
if
they
it
just
doesn't, then
enjoy
whatever.
their supernatural romance. Like, I read the books when they came out, and I think I didn't hate the first one. And
I read the first one also, and I found it very interesting that I was able to readily get into the mindset of a teenage girl.
yeah.
Because I think that the book
You
is
and
written...
Seth can capture the teenage
Yeah.
girls.
Well, there we
Capture the
go.
teenage-
Capturing teenage girl. But yeah, and what I found really fascinating about it, one of the many things I found really fascinating about it, is in the book, the big conflict between Edwin, whatever the hell,
Edward.
sparkly Robert Pattinson, and the evil vampires.
Sparkly Batman. Thank you very much.
It occupies about 2 pages of the book, and then the final senior prom, that is the big deal thing at the end of the book, is like about 8 pages.
Because that's what a girl's priority
Exactly,
is,
and I
too.
thought that
Yeah.
was, and the thing is, I think the book renders that pretty convincingly, and I was all in on the book. Movies.
But moving away from Twilight.
Anyway.
Oh, that's right. We need to move out of the Twilight
We're moving
into the
on from it.
television, TV.
Twilight is a television show, but that's we got that era that's essentially trying to get that same market. It might as well.
And you had True Blood coming
Yeah.
out around then too, which
Yeah.
I read the books. I watched the first couple seasons. They lost me at some point. It got to be a little too much, so I didn't watch the last few seasons. But I really enjoyed the first season of True Blood.
Yeah, I watched the first season and read the first book, and that's where I have the other books. I haven't read them yet.
They were fun. I mean, again, they were basically grown-up Twilight, except I think, a little smarter because I mean they're grown up, so there's some more nuance. The characters are fun. There was enough Buffy in it too that it really appealed to me at the time. I haven't read the books in probably a decade. I don't know if they've held up, but it's that same sort of one. And vampires are always good for fantasy.
Yeah.
Vampires are always good because they're sexy. They're sexy
Yes.
in a way that the Wolfman is maybe less sexy, although apparently Teen Wolf, I haven't watched Teen Wolf.
I've heard it's a
but
solid show.
I
haven't
hear
watched
it's
it
no,
yet.
it's on my list to get
Everybody's
to.
sleeping on my Phantom of the Opera.
If there was ever a Fan of the Opera show, I would have been all over it.
There's.
No, I'm talking about being hot, man.
Oh, okay.
About what?
About him being hot, man.
Phantom of the Opera is hot.
Yeah,
I
he's a big
mean,
fan of the
We're like
Heroic One.
way.
You
we're-
should read some fan fiction.
There's plenty that. Remember, Allison's a big fan, so she can
Yeah.
probably point you at
Fan
it.
with a PH.
Yeah.
I-
That's why
I-
the f is in there.
Her and I probably read some of the same fan fiction.
Probably.
It wouldn't shock me.
So other TV shows, guys.
I have so many.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I'm
bet
Bob, I've been talking a lot.
Well, no,
Why don't
it's
you-
like we're kind of bouncing around here. So I wanted to let's see here. Blah, 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 blah. Speaking.
I loved that show.
That was the best
Speaking of
show
anthologies
ever.
and movie adaptations, that's you guys want to watch Friday the 13th and Freddy's Nightmares?
I miss them.
Yeah, I watched them here and there, and I've revisited Freddy's Nightmares from a bootleg disc.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
me too.
Because
Are they available anywhere?
No, they're not. They're
No.
not commercially available
There's a huge
anywhere.
rights
I think-
issue.
Yeah, true.
I think those were ones that I always kind of wanted to watch, but I never knew how to get a hold of
I
them.
bought them at Crypticon from the
bootleg.
from
Can
the
I borrow
bootleg
them?
booths. Yeah,
Cool.
they're okay. They're cheap. I've seen them more than I have Friday the 13th. But they're all both the stories are anthology series.
Yeah.
Based around like Friday the 13th has nothing to do with Jason, but Freddy's Nightmares has Freddy telling the story
Being
of,
the-
This
of
is
his
Robert
Once
Englund
in
kind
a
of
while,
hosting,
yeah.
doesn't he? I think I saw like maybe
and
one
he's
episode.
in like the first episode's his backstory, which doesn't directed by Toby Hooper. Doesn't match up time wise or character wise
course
or
not.
anything else.
It's TV.
But it's fine. It's cheesy. Where it's funny, like Freddy's like, "Yeah, go ahead and burn me." And he starts burning. He's like, "No, I made a mistake."
Well, one of the one little like trivia footnote with Friday the 13th is that the leading lady on it was Wendy Roby, who ended up in Twin Peaks.
Oh, I didn't.
And
realize
the
that.
main guy in that
Absolutely.
was the main guy
filmed in
in
Canada?
Jason Goes to Hell as a different character.
Ah!
And at one point there were not Creighton Duke, but the nerdy dude. At one point they were gonna bring in Jason's mask because it'd be like the finale was gonna relate into the series by like because
the shtick was
they were
going
looking
to
for
antique.
He
Yeah.
gets his uncle's antique shop and starts selling the antiques
That's
until he
right.
finds out it's like, oh, those are all cursed. You shouldn't sell the antiques in your antique shop. Like, well, shit. Gotta get them back. And here's the story of each of those things. And the last one is going to be Jason's mask, and it's going to come back. And they
His
never got
antique
around to
hockey
filming
mask?
it. Yeah. Hey, there. Maybe it's the thrift store in this case.
Hey man, that Zach Baggins asshole bought Charles Manson's soiled garments, so it's possible.
I had somebody ask me about him on my tour the other day.
Man,
and I was
fuck
like,
Zach Baggins.
I couldn't
thank you.
keep the eye roll
That's a
out
lot
of
of
my
disease
face.
I don't want.
That, like, I didn't even fully roll my eyes, but apparently my face did something where the guy was just like, never mind, you have spoken. And I'm
He
like,
makes
oh.
the Warrens look dignified.
Oh, snaps to Cody.
There's some hot take.
Anyway.
But, yeah, you can borrow my Freddy's Nightmares.
Or
It
you
came
can
out...
borrow mine, we both have them.
Yeah, it came out like while the series is still going on, so it was between 4 and 5 when they came out.
I remember reading something about how much Robert Englund fucking hated doing those. Because I guess they changed showrunners a couple times.
Of course they did.
And he was like, man, it was just so much Freddy. He got Freddied out quick.
Oh,
Because
yeah,
they were
got it.
making him back to back to back to
Yeah.
back. He didn't even want to come back for, I think, they had to talk him into part 5.
Yeah, this is
He
right
was-
after he did Freddy's Nightmares. He's like, fucking done.
Because he's like,
Yeah.
he's burned out. He's like, I don't want to do
Burned
this more
out.
funny stuff. Get out of here.
But you give him you give an actor enough money and it becomes worth it.
Yeah,
Look,
Supernatural seasons
And then,
6 or 14.
and now he's like, I think I could do one more Freddy role. I'm like, what the fuck? Do it. And it's like they have the rights back. I think it's
Yeah.
with somebody. I'm like, fucking do the fucking movie with him before he dies.
Just don't go for something like that.
He's
Don't
got
put that
to-
out there, so you Bobby.
Don't put that in the universe.
But then they also makes you think of Nightmare Cafe, which is a 6-episode TV show with Robert Englund, produced by Craven. It's not great. I watched another bootleg of that, and they're iffy. It's kind of, you could tell they had like no budget. But they're okay. There's stuff in there, but also another anthology when people died in Abyss Cafe and talks about how they died and like them
Like a
affecting
purgatory
their-
cafe kind of
Yeah,
thing?
essentially, where they kind of reevaluate the last thing that happened to them and move on from there, and you get a couple souls who are stuck. One played Robert Englund, and then the other played by a couple people who are around who've done various things here and there.
Now, what happens when you get like a really embarrassing death? Like
Robert Englund makes fun of you.
it's like
Like
so.
you're Elvis and you've been straining on the toilet too hard and you just die of a...
Well, yeah, I don't think I want to go on the television shows. You get the
It's
trauma
like looks
leading
like
up
you
to it.
died
That's for that.
trying to
That's for
fit
that.
2 cucumbers up your ass.
Three's my record. I don't know.
I know, right? It's like
I'm sorry, that's quote of the day. Hi, Twitter. You died trying to fit 2 cucumbers up your ass. 3's my record. Podcast quote of the day.
Fair
We
enough,
are live
fair
tweeting Bob's comment.
enough. Yes.
Kim is live tweeting.
I am.
All right. So, what else would you like to mention? I still got the
Scooby Doo.
I have so
Scooby-Doo,
many. Oh,
yeah, that's
Scooby Doo.
in
You
there.
have to talk to mention.
talking about
Scooby-Doo.
cartoons.
Total horror gateway.
Yeah.
You know, I must say I was always frustrated when at the end it was always some greedy asshole who'd get a mask ripped off.
Until you get
and
Zombie
that's why I
Island.
liked some of the stuff they did in the '90s, where it was, or in the
Zombie
also-
Island, which is Curse.
Yeah.
Some of the earlier stuff kind of they're like 13 Ghosts Scooby Doo.
Yeah,
And
that's
late
Vincent
80s.
Price is bad in that.
Now that said, I thought that the comic repartee between Shaggy and Scooby was absolutely classic in the original TV show.
And I have to bring this up. I saw a meme the other day where it's like, Raggy, I'm scared. It's okay, Scoob. Here's a Scooby snack. They say as the gang is gathered around Scooby and he's about to be euthanized.
Yeah, bring us down. But we'll talk about
I'm sorry.
I do like those. They go around occasionally, especially around Halloween, of like that one guy who drew the gang interacting with modern horror icons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see a couple different versions of those. A couple of people have done them at different points, and there's always really.
I mean,
clever.
who
I like
doesn't
them.
want to drive around with their talking dogs, smoking weed, and solving crimes? I mean, the weed's only implied, but it was the 70s, and listen
So
to
like,
Shaggy
you should go
talk.
to Crystal Lake, Scoop. Well, you got to interview Matthew Lillard a couple years ago, which is awesome.
Yeah, I did.
I'm pointing at
Oh,
Tony.
He was
right
lovely.
That was a blast. I mean, he was. It was a lot of fun, and it was interesting. I had not seen either of the Scooby-Doo films prior to I had just seen them just prior to interviewing him, like not a week before I actually interviewed him, and he was. He is so perfect in those movies. He is
Shaggy.
a magnificent Shaggy, and I never thought I would put those two words together. But yeah, he's a magnificent Shaggy. I have some other interesting stories about that interview, but I'll abstain.
You know, Magnificent Shaggy, that could be a Scooby-Doo Wizard of Gore crossover.
Oh my God,
That's terrifying.
Shaggy the Magnificent.
Yep.
But that
But
makes
we
you
diverge.
that makes me think of like other like cartoons I watched in my youth, going up like Beetlejuice or
Darkwing Duck.
or Duckula.
Duckula.
Darkwing Duck did.
Oh no,
jumped in
I was
horror,
thinking. I was
yeah.
thinking Duckula.
Okay, Darkwing
It's
Duck did
Count
bad in there a
Duckula.
couple times. Yeah,
There was two ducks, and I
Yeah.
always say the wrong one. No, I have because it's on my list. Count Duckula.
yeah. It's like that was my number one thing. Is the first thing I remember watching it.
The opening of Count Duckula I loved too. The opening credits to it, the little story.
Yeah, with the ketchup
the
instead.
blood, and he said the way he says blood.
So dry, so British. It was,
So
it was when
British.
Nickelodeon moved over that, Mighty Mouse, Banana Man,
Oh yeah,
a bunch of Danger Mouse, but a bunch of British tunes from the late 70s. And
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
oh no, good.
But I did want to drop one in just because I enjoy flaunting how goddamn old I am. One of the more popular kids' sort of horror crossover cartoons when I was a wee lad in the early 70s was a show called The Groovy Ghoulies.
Yeah, it's on my list here.
Hey, awesome. Yeah, that was a very fascinating show because it was basically an animated version of Laugh-In with monsters. And so it was all quippy wisecracks, And then they would always have, since this was a Filmation animation studio show, you would always have like basically the same animated sequence repeated ad nauseum, just because they wanted to save money. You know, if you watch all the old Filmation cartoons, like the old Star Trek animated series,
I just watched that again recently. My wife's like, "This is so cheap." I'm like, "Bet the writing's fine though."
Yeah, that's the thing. That's a horse of another color, is how good the writing was, because they had like actual writers of the real Star Trek episodes doing that. But with the Groovy Ghoulies, it was all about snarky wisecracks and musical numbers, and they would have some kind of actually sort of cool, kind of groovy, 60s, 70s, monster rock songs, but it would always be the same animation for the band. I think like the Dracula character would be like, playing guitar or something. You'd always be making the same moves. And but that was actually one of my favorite TV shows when I was a kid, and it was a little bit of, I couldn't say it was a gateway because I was already hardcore into horror, but I thought it was cool that I could turn on
a lot of Universal
TV.
Monsters.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tony was already on the toilet in a public bathroom with a needle sticking out of his arm. The Groovy Ghoulies was just extra.
But when it comes to like that and like Dracula, like I think Michelle Ness worked. She posted up something about Dracula like last month, and I was like, I remember watching the show as a kid, but I'm kind of afraid to revisit it because it's gonna suck now. Suck.
But
is there anywhere that
it would know is commercially available? I remember seeing Best Buy like 12 years ago. I don't know if it's still there.
I bet the library would have it then.
They might.
I would love to revisit that.
I would like to see it too. I remember really finding it very amusing.
And I watched it first run, so I was a kid when I watched this, and
that is a long time ago.
I know, right? It was like turn of the century or something.
Fuck, man.
I tell ya.
Can I throw out another cartoon since we're talking about cartoons?
Yeah.
Gargoyles?
Definitely, absolutely. It's gonna be a Disney Plus. I cannot wait to rewatch it.
I know. I'm stoked because it was at the time too. It had a lot of adult themes. I remember one of the characters getting shot at one point by accident because I think one of the gargoyles found the police officer's gun, and it was also, you had not just a female detective, but a female detective, and she's not white, which was awesome. There was that was a really big show for me when I was younger. I loved it. Also, the voice actors were fantastic, and
Jonathan Frakes was one.
It was basically half of the
too?
Next Generation work, because I think Brett Spinner was also
Marina Service, I think.
Yeah. It was a bunch of the Next Generation people,
which would also explain why the writing was strong.
Yeah. Well, it was a really
Keith David. Fucking Keith David, man.
But it was one of those shows that, like, we look at shows that have the adult appeal as well as the kid appeal. Like, adults could watch the show with their kids and enjoy it and get the first, because it started out as a movie, I think, or at least it was
probably like a pilot movie.
Pilot movie kind of thing. And because I remembered when I was older being able to access a DVD or a VHS of the movie and rewatching it then, but I haven't rewatched it in years, and I'm really excited to be able to watch the whole series again, because that's one I want to revisit. And I also loved, there were Shakespeare elements to it. You had Puck from Midsummer Night's Dream, and I don't know, there was a lot there. It was an intelligent cartoon.
Speaking of, actually, this brings me to a show that made a strong impression on me when I was a kid also, because it was basically an adventure cartoon, but it had episodes that were most definitely, absolutely hardcore horror. Was a show that Hanna-Barbera did in the mid-'60s that was syndicated when I was in grade school, called Johnny Quest.
Johnny
Damn
Quest!
right. I watched that.
And
the redos are all good too.
I'm not fond of the redos. And
I like
that's probably the thing
is
that Johnny Quest started out as sort of like a junior James Bond.
Yeah.
With his dog and his East Indian friend and his scientist genius dad and his guardian who
Ray Spannon,
who looks who unfortunately Mike Pence
I know,
which makes me very
ruined
sad.
a towhead.
But it's Ray Spannon, not racist Bannon. But one of the things that was really
you
great
want to talk
about
about
the
just
show,
for that one.
Thank you.
You had the queued up, like I have to talk Johnny Quest so I can make the show.
One of the things that I really always admired about Johnny Quest, and it actually really holds up. I have a DVD box set of the original series, is that first of all, the design work is really sophisticated for a frickin' kids animated cartoon. This was designed by an artist named Doug Wildey, who had a very pulp novel cover aesthetic when he directed, and so every episode of that show has an awful lot of scenes that look like they've come out of like a two-fisted action comic. And also, when it descended into horror, it descended hard. Characters died. There were truly horrific images that just stuck with me forever. There's an episode where a mummy is brought to life, and it's brought to life by a guy who is like basically against the colonization and the exploitation of the Egyptian people. I mean, how adult can you get? And probably one of the most scary shows I ever saw was an episode, and I'm blanking on the name of it, where Johnny and his dad and the gang end up on a completely deserted fishing trawler. With only one guy who is surviving, who is unfortunately an Asian man, and he is rather caricature. But if you can overlook that, the boat is terrorized by a sea monster, and much of this monster's reign of terror is related via journal entries that end very abruptly when a character
nice. I like
exactly and between the music and the unearthly noises that this thing made and the swatches of suspense that are in it, it's scary shit. It's like, even today, well, not today, the last time I watched it was probably about 4 years ago, but it still holds up. It still really has that impact. And part of it is, it was in an era where people were still figuring out what was appropriate for kids and what wasn't. And so you could make a show where you had like a huge amount of implied violence and monsters and things that you normally... I mean, if you tried to make a show like Johnny Quest today, it would be marketed at adults.
Venture
Period.
Brothers.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's
yeah,
the Venture
yeah.
Brothers.
Yeah.
I was about to say, I'm like, have you ever seen Venture Brothers, good sir?
That is the
Or
updated
the
version.
more appropriate question is, if you've watched Venture Brothers, have you ever seen Johnny Quest?
I have.
What's Johnny Quest is canon in Venture Brothers, if you've watched it.
Yes.
Like, the grown-up version of him shows up.
He's all strung out on drugs and shit.
Yeah. It's... And that's
Which I would be if I fought mummies as a fucking child.
Yeah, it's...
That's true.
But yeah, there are a few episodes of... there's also a great one with an alien spider that's basically this robotic thing that literally, like, vaporizes human beings. I mean, you see it, like, disintegrate human beings. And this is like a kid's show.
Like War of the Worlds stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. It's crazy. So, yeah.
Can I throw one out there that's not? It's not from when I was a kid. It was one from
Yeah, everything's from all ages.
a couple years. Well,
Yeah.
it only ran for one season, and it was one that it wasn't a perfect show, but I was genuinely disappointed it only ran for one season. The River.
Never heard of it, but
It was a found footage, which is why
I'm listening.
Oh, wow.
It was why I dug it. It was a found footage show about this guy who disappears in the Amazon. And so I want to say it was like his wife and son, or I mean, it was long enough ago that I struggled a little with some of the details because I watched it when it first aired, which now I need to look when it first aired.
So is this basically just Cannibal Holocaust, the show?
No, there was a
Holocaust,
weird like
the TV series.
there was a weird supernatural element to it.
2012, Bruce Greenwood, Joe Anderson?
Yes.
Yeah, 8
yes.
episodes.
Greenwood. Oh, hey, that's...
created by Warren Pelly, who made
Yes.
Paranormal Activity.
And that was what first drew me to it. And it was one I was really, really bummed that it only lasted
8 episodes.
8 episodes because there was something, and it comes back to what we were saying earlier, like, it didn't get the ratings, so it got canceled. And I'm like, right when it kind of started to figure out what the fuck it was, it got canceled.
Yeah.
So, producer of the other main person produced Millennium, the X-Files spinoff, which looks pretty alright. Freaky Links, I remember that show. The Dead Zones. This guy's lurked on horror a lot.
It was really interesting. This is Netflix was in talks to possibly continue it. Though
He
they
wrote
only
American
passed.
Gothic. The other Matthew Berry, who
Yes.
Matt Perry, Michael Perry. I can't speak today. Michael Perry, who's the other creator of it, wrote The Voices, a great movie if you haven't seen that, and wrote American Gothic for 6
But it
episodes.
was I really was enjoying it, and again, it was figuring its shit out. And it was not given the opportunity to go further. And I was really crushed that it wasn't, because I loved the idea of a found footage TV show. Because I am an apologist for found footage movies. I think they're really interesting. Thank you.
We should as a
Fuck
topic.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's...
Which we need to do as a topic.
Yeah, I literally just said that.
And when I was still in the Horror Honeys, I was one of the few who was really into found footage. And I got a lot of shit about it. Loving shit, because it was the Horror Honeys, of course. But It was such an interesting idea, and it was really starting to pick up, and it got canceled, and I was crushed. So it's one that I don't even know if it's. I'm sure it's available somewhere.
It's from ABC.
It was an ABC. Yeah, it was a mainstream show. But I also it was a really interesting because it was like 2012. I think you said.
Yeah.
Bob? It was on ABC. It was mainstream.
You can rent the whole season from Amazon for $10.
Yeah.
For $15.
It was a mainstream show. It was on ABC. So you're seeing, even though it wasn't successful, the entering of horror into mainstream audiences. This was something that Paranormal Activity had been successful enough, and other found footage movies have been successful enough. It was like, let's try this.
Well, and I can see found footage translating really super well to a TV series.
Yeah, I thought it did. Again, it was figuring itself out when it got canceled, and I was really disappointed.
You know, not all right. So talking about one season, season 2 of this coming out. We're talking about found footage style. It's not exactly the same thing. The adaptation of What We Do in the Shadows is fucking brilliant.
It's more of a like faux documentary kind of style, but
like
man.
Office style.
Yeah.
I as I've said before, the movies, one of my top 5 movies of all time, and I think the show is actually better.
I think the show is better too.
We've talked about it in a couple different episodes of the podcast previously, but I just want to throw it out there since we're talking about newer television shows in that.
Anybody ever watch The Strain, if we're talking about vampire shows?
I've read the books, haven't seen the show.
I've been curious about the show, if it was worth watching. I heard very mixed things.
I didn't watch it. I was just wondering if anybody else had.
Yeah. It's one of those, it's been a long term on my list. It's one that I bump a lot.
I heard that the kid is insufferable, and that just makes me...
The Del Toro connection makes me want to see it eventually.
Walking Dead.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
We can't
stumbling at this point, but yeah.
No, it's actually
I gave up on it last season.
It's actually really
season
picked up.
5.
Well, and
Terminus
the thing is
left.
very hard to realize because now the show has been on for so long that it's become
10 years.
again a pop culture fixture. Is how good the first season was.
Oh yeah,
and how like dramatically sound it was, how solid it was, how suspenseful it was, how utterly involving it was as television in general and as horror television.
I really wish that they had let Darabont do his full vision for the show, because I thought that his zombies were better than what we have now. Like his zombies like picked up tools and they could climb fences and they were fucking dangerous.
Yeah.
And then when they kind of took that away, season 2 suffered. Because it was half.
Well, season 2 suffered for a long reason.
Season 2 had its, but season
There's
3...
some I mean, I actually really have a soft spot in my heart for season 2, but I'll readily acknowledge why people don't like it. I think it meanders a lot.
It.
I like it, but
if I'm
meanders a lot.
rewatching, I skip it.
It was
Yeah,
slow.
interesting.
I like 3, 4, 5, and 6 were really, really good. 7 falls off the rails. 8, 2. I still watched them, but they fall off the rails. But season 9 really did a lot to redeem the show. And from what I've heard, season 10 is watching.
See, I feel like, because I dropped off, I watched like the first episode or 2 of season 9, and I just couldn't. Partially because it's become such misery porn that I'm...
What really pissed me off was Fear the Walking Dead abandoning the start of the apocalypse in season 1. I have always thought that a detailed show... And I think it would fit best in a more of like a news type documentary. Maybe not a found footage, but like kind of like a mockumentary type thing of the start of a zombie apocalypse would be incredible. And to see,
I'd be into that.
And to see like how society collapses and all of that good stuff. And they're like, okay, well here's 6 episodes, and now we're just doing Walking Dead on the West Coast. Like, no, that's not what we wanted. I specifically remember them marketing it as like you're going to see what actually happened when the virus first. And no, you get 6 fucking episodes of that. Fuck that shit.
Black Summer did that a little bit, but we started maybe like a little bit into the apocalypse, and everything is still going to shit. But the show ended up becoming Walking Dead after the first 3 episodes of that. So.
Yeah. Another newer show, if we're talking newer shows, The Terror.
Yes.
Which is also anthology.
Heard it's good, though.
Each season is self-contained.
I've only seen season 1, but season 1's fantastic. I heard season 2's better, so.
I just started watching season 2, and it's... the season 1 is taking place... the failed Arctic expedition the HMS Terror and Erebus.
Yeah.
And like, fuck, man, the acting is stunning. How that show did not get any recognition from the Academy, I think that's criminal. It was so good. The acting, the directing, the visuals are gorgeous. It was, for me, I watched it within the last few months, the first season. It's become my, like, this is the show I'm pushing on people now because it was that good. The second season is internment camps, and George Takei is in it. And so far, I've just watched the first few episodes. It's very good, very different, but I appreciate that. It has that kind of the spirit of the first season still, but
Now, I find this is sort of off on a tangent. I do find it very interesting that it seems like a lot of shows now they're creating like a whole self-contained season, but then doing a completely different show that's a complete self-contained season the next year, like American Horror Story. Obviously, there's been, Mike Flanagan is supposedly planning a second season of The Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah,
that's
based
gonna have
on
nothing
turning the script.
to do
Yeah.
with the first one. What are your guys' takes on that practice? What do you think about that? I think it's an interesting trend.
well, and some of them, I mean, American Horror Story, they all exist in the same universe.
Yeah.
Because with Apocalypse, they all crossed over with each other. So you do have, and I think that's the intention too with Haunting of Hill House, is that even though the stories aren't directly intersecting, they're taking
Still
place in the same
In a very
world?
same, they might have like same tone, same idea. I think it's
Yeah.
the same way, in the same way that like in franchise and movie franchises, like even if they're separate stories, it's still the same
Well, Lynch loves doing that.
feeling to it. You know,
Because he said that a handful of his movies are in the same universe.
Yeah,
as
like
Twin
Mulholland
Peaks.
Drive and Twin Peaks are in the
even
same
though
place,
they
and-
don't in any way story-wise line up.
besides like Laura Palmer and the other victim being in the dream sequence.
being in the dream sequence, yeah.
Before what's actually dream sequence real and Mulholland Drive is a whole different
Right.
thing. But actually, I think it's a fantastic idea and a good way to approach which you can see like the same like tone and creators and people, and you know what you're getting into for season 2, but you don't have to watch the previous season if you don't like Castle Rock.
Yeah.
We're talking about like is Castle Rock disconnected from season 1, but you just have the same. It's a spiritual sequel, spiritual follow-ups. You know.
Well, and I think in the world of binge watching too, it's smart because you acknowledge that somebody is probably going to binge watch one season and then take time before watching the second season. And if they're self-contained, that's a lot easier to do because I even do this with Stranger Things. I will, when a new season comes out, enough time passes, I'm like, shit, man, I need to go
Gotta
back
get
and
caught
rewatch
up.
because it's been long enough. I'm going to forget things, and if I forget things, I'm going to miss details.
Yeah.
So I feel compelled to rewatch, and sometimes that prevents me from starting a season right away because I'm like, I need to rewatch it. It's been long enough. I don't remember things.
I watched that in season 3. I was like, I kept her announcing like, have we met that person before? She's
Yeah.
like, oh, it's that person. I'm like, okay, and she'd do the same thing to me. It's like, I remember that person. I don't remember a story. Like then I'd pop in. You know, it's like so we worked it out together. But ultimately, I think franchise like anthology seasons are a really good way of doing it. If you give it a new name, people might not watch as much.
Right,
So you're gonna follow
but it has that brand loyalty. But also, if you're gonna, I also think it's different. It used to be the TV seasons. New seasons started September, October, and shows ran through May, June. And you took the summer off, where it was reruns.
Yeah.
And now you could go a year, you could go 2 years between seasons. So if you're bringing over points from previous seasons, you have to rewatch because I'm like, shit, it's been 2 years. It's where it used to be 2 to 3 months
Exactly.
in between our seasons and they'd still do a little recap or they'd, leading up to the season premiere, they'd rerun the last couple
Previously
episodes.
on.
Previously on.
Yeah.
But it meant that you were feeling like, oh yeah. I remember it's refreshed my brain from 2 months ago, 3 months ago when I watched the season finale. But now it's like, shit, man, the last season of Stranger Things was 2 years ago. What happened? There's Russians? What's going on? I think it's smart for the way a lot of people are viewing television now. To do that.
Because people are taking a lot of television show like extended movies.
Well, exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
that is essentially what's happening, and part of it is because I think saying the word miniseries, which is really what these are.
Yeah.
They're miniseries, but there's a stigma to that word. I
They're
think
6 to 8 hours, self-contained. They wrap
But
it up, and then you can pick up the same characters later, but it's not quite the
I think
same.
people hear miniseries and they think like lesser production value, lesser. Whereas saying like a limited series makes it sound classier. Or an anthology series where each season is self-contained. It's like it's fucking miniseries. But we don't like calling things miniseries because we think of miniseries as being something like our grandmother watches on Lifetime.
Which is interesting because there's a whole evolution of that, because there was a time when miniseries were the penultimate.
Like Roots being a great
Rich
example.
Man, Poor Man.
Yeah.
These were all like very big
North
deal
and South,
shows.
like
Mm-hmm.
16 hours.
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
essentially were a season of television show in, of course, of 2 weeks.
But then I think things like that actually burned people out, and as they continued to proliferate more because they garnered ratings, there was less quality put into them, and so they became ghettoized. They became stigmatized.
Well, and you also run into again, today, if I miss an episode of a TV show, it's on demand,
Yep.
it's streaming online, I can rent it through iTunes or Amazon or fucking anywhere, it's no big deal.
Yep.
But if I'm watching an 8-hour miniseries that's running over, it's a 4-night event, and I miss one part, I'm fucked. Because this is when things didn't rerun, and they're not going to rerun a miniseries.
Yep.
And so there's also that if you miss an episode, you're screwed. Because you've missed a chunk of the story.
Yep.
when The Stand played in 1994,
Oh, yeah.
but when we were watching it, we weren't sure if we missed a night. We did, because it started playing like, did we miss something? I thought tonight was episode 2. It was actually episode 3. So my mom and I were watching it, like, she had read the book, so she knew what was going on. I'm like, what? Did we just do a time jump? It's like, no, we just literally missed episode 2
Yeah.
of
That's
The
an
Stand.
interesting thing to bring up. We don't have a lot of horror miniseries. That is
used to.
definitely
That
one
aren't directed
thing.
by Mick Garris.
Right.
Which is actually, I was really super fond of The Stand. I really enjoyed it.
It worked.
I actually thought, and I'm a huge fan of the book. It's probably my favorite King book. I was impressed with how much of kind of King's expansiveness of vision in that book they got, because it's the kind of story. It's like what, a 1,300-page book.
Yeah, the extent.
You need, if you're going to do
version.
that on, that's like 4 feature films. Unlike what felt like a little bit padded out It, if you did a Stand motion picture, it would need to be 3 or 4. And so I think that the miniseries format was extremely favorable to that show and gave it a chance to breathe and gave it a chance to approach the character development that you get in the novel.
Aren't they doing?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I was
heard-
wait to jump in at the
yeah.
end. That the current one of the Skarsgårds is playing Randall Flagg, not the same one from It, but
The other Skarsgård.
one or the other.
yeah.
There's like a gazillion.
There's
They're
a
the
lot.
Baldwins of Sweden, right?
But they're all much more attractive.
Yes, yes. And they're all much better actors because
you go.
there's one good Baldwin and a bunch of okay ones. And sometimes
It's
even worse.
Daniel Baldwin is the good one.
Totally.
Fair game. All
But
the
yeah,
way.
I would welcome that. I mean, seeing a new reiteration of The Stand, I think would be great. And I think also doing it in an era where there is more permission to be more graphic and to be more like frank. In
There's some
content.
fucked up stuff in the Stand.
And there's some very fucked up stuff in the novel, absolutely. And so the fact that they will be given a broader canvas, I think, is a really good thing. I'm a frequent listener to Mick Garris's podcast, Postmortem, and he was talking on one episode about The Stand and about all of the things that they couldn't include. Something as simple as a corpse with its eyes open. They could not shoot that. They had all the corpses had to have their eyes shut because it was too unsettling and not suitable for network television for a corpse to have its eyes
Well,
open.
1994.
Things
Exactly.
have changed.
Exactly. They have changed considerably.
But I mean, 1994 was 25 years
Yeah,
ago.
so you go. And the thing with Mick Garris, it brings in a whole different thing of the Stephen King miniseries, Stephen King made-for-TV movie. We didn't even talk like made-for-TV movies. It kind of
That's a whole other.
That's a whole
that's
different.
That's almost a whole
podcast.
other
No.
episode.
So we can just, I can
started
just
to bring a
table
few
that.
in, but
I
was
have like a whole section like
that's
TV
a whole-
movies.
No, it's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we'll just go ahead and just table that then at that point.
Yes. Nobody has said Carnival, so I'm going to say Carnival.
I watched the first couple episodes. I
No
watched
clue
the
what
rest.
the
I do
fuck
have
that
the.
even
I do
is.
own
It's
an
2
entire thing.
seasons. It was an HBO
HBO.
show. A lot of the same writers as Twin Peaks, too, which is one of the things that appealed to me at the time.
It starred Clea Duvall, didn't it?
She was
Nick
in it.
Stahl
It's-
and Clancy fucking Brown.
Clancy
Bill Moses
Brown.
in there.
Bill it's very much a
Clancy Brown's all you need,
and
I'm watching
Adrian
it.
Barbeau.
Yeah.
It's a huge ensemble show. And what's his butt from I don't know, one of the Terminators. I think.
Nick Stahl from Terminator 3.
Oh yeah.
The first Terminator 3.
The first Terminator 3.
The one
I
playing
know
is now another. It's a third Terminator 3.
it was on when I was in college, and I watched. It was on HBO because my university we had HBO through our television, and
Fucking rich kid.
yeah. Anyway,
All right, no class warfare here, kids. Can't we all get along?
but it was. I really enjoyed it. I thought again the first season I thought was stronger than the second season, but I was really disappointed because it leaves on a really weird place in the second season.
They thought they were going to have a season
They
3.
were.
And
They
canceled.
thought they were going to have a season 3, and you can tell they thought they were going to have a season 3, and so it's a little maddening to watch. Part of me sometimes likes to rewatch just the first season because even though it's a cliffhanger, it still feels weirdly self-contained. But really interesting. Again, going back to there's a few episodes that are genuinely kind of unsettling. There's one with Meatloaf's daughter.
Huh.
Plays there's a character who they're like hoochie coochie girls. They dance naked, you know, and there's
As you do.
there's two of it's the woman that you know has her 2 daughters who do it, and one of the daughters, and it's very Twin Peaks. This idea of this girl dying but remaining in this tiny town they travel through as a spirit for the miners who are there. And there's some really unsettling visuals with her where you're realizing that this poor girl is stuck here forever with a bunch of horny men. And it's like now is a whole other kind of disturbing thing. Because that episode still really gets me. But it's a fantastic classic cast. And Clancy Brown is just... He's wonderful.
Yeah, it's I have the first. I have both seasons on disc. I bought ages ago. I watched the first disc, the first season a while back. I need to watch the rest because it was gripping. I liked it.
It's
It's
really...
great look to it.
It's gorgeous. It's
the depression or before
gorgeously-
depression.
During the Dust Bowl,
yeah,
it's
I
the
can
Dust
remember it was
Bowl.
like the 10s or the 20s.
Because that's part of why he initially joins, is
Yeah.
that I think his mom dies or something.
It was
and-
the farm, yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of these, like, clouds of dust rolling everywhere. And it's all about this traveling carnival. But it's the cast is fantastic. The visuals are dead
Looking
on.
across the street.
Are you looking at my shirtless neighbor again?
No. I thought I saw somebody moving in that building over there. I'm like, that's an office building.
This is how we
This
start.
is a very fucking rear window. We're
Yeah,
gonna
that's
see, like, a
I've
killing
literally.
or something.
Rear window was
It's
literally
gonna
the
be
next
like-
2 words in my mouth.
Listen, I spend a lot of time when you live just off downtown Seattle and there's huge windows. I see a lot of things.
How many times you see somebody jerking it?
A lot. Although
Oh.
more often I see sex. I see a lot of sex.
That'd be like, but not the sex part, but the murder part would be like, yeah, a good update for Rear Window. You're recording a live podcast when you watch a murder across the way, or
That'd be a
wasn't there like
great
those
short
things where like,
film.
Hey, you know
where
what?
like the isn't there a short story or something where a couple girls just randomly dialing numbers and then they end up dialing someone who's killing someone? I think it was a movie like 2 years ago or something like that. It's like, I know what you did. And he's like literally like beating a woman to death.
A long time ago, 1965 to be exact. William Castle produced a movie called "I Saw What You Did," which is that very premise.
Oh,
So
they've been updated a couple times.
yeah, and I mean it's pretty fertile. I mean that's In fact, I'm kind of. Is the update that you're thinking of? Does it tie in cell phone technology and yada yada?
Yeah, I think so. I can't remember all the details. I don't think the movie was good, but it might have been an episode of something. It might have been an anthology. I don't remember, but it's gonna get at me for a while.
There's a lot of movies on that. Well,
you could do
I mean, the thing is that when you live, I mean, the same way I'm not somebody I like light, and so I don't put my blinds down a lot. But you're aware that, like, I'm in the living room and I'm assuming somebody can see me at any moment.
Yeah.
And that's fine. As long as you have that in your head, it's fine. Sometimes I think people forget that with some of their activities. But, like, this building is literally windows.
Yeah.
Anyway. That's
But
a tangent.
speaking of anthologies and telling different stories in a single room when you're looking thing, Room 104 is on HBO the last couple of years. I watched the first season for 100 Days of Horror this year. It's not always horror. It kind of moves around to different things. Horror, drama, sci-fi, some mixtures of. But it's a quality show I've been watching through. Have you guys watched Channel Zero? I've heard mixed things about it.
I've heard mixed things about
the
it.
Shudder show.
It's been on my list for a
That's
long. Well,
another anthology,
it started out as a Sci-Fi Network show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then
Because I have a screener of the first season from a couple years ago with the Horror Honeys.
Which makes me also think of like Black Mirror as a newer horror, techno horror show. So that like Channel Zero and Black Mirror probably came around the same
Around the same time.
of updates of different ways of looking at things.
Bates Motel.
Oh yeah, I didn't really care for it. I watched the first couple of seasons.
I really liked the first season. And then the second season for me was really hard to get through, and so I eventually stopped.
Yeah, I think I saw somewhere in season 3.
But I always
it wasn't
thought-
going anywhere. Like
I
you've
always thought
lost
the
like
performances were really good. I thought the storytelling was meandering.
Yeah, because it's one of those things where kind of like speaking of, if around the same time was on was Under the Dome, where it started out as something that would probably be meant to be like a limited one season, and then they got renewed. And like, well, crap, we have to extend our story, and that's where it lost me. Both those kind of like it's like, well, they just lost their ending. Just became vague.
Dexter. Dexter for me is, other than I don't like to acknowledge it exists past season 4.
Yeah,
but
I quit after John Lithgow.
I watched all of it. I regret watching some of it. Dexter was the show that finally gave me permission to stop watching shows. Dexter for me was I used to be a show loyalist. Even if I stopped enjoying it, because bearing in mind again too, this is I grew up in a pre-binge era. And so for me, if you started a show and you stuck with it, you committed till the end. Even if I stopped enjoying a show, I would continue watching it. And Dexter was the show where I finally gave myself permission to say, this is fucking shit. And we can stop watching
Oh, what,
this.
you don't like the ending where he winds up as a...
I don't know. I didn't watch the
A logger in the Pacific Northwest somewhere, probably.
Yeah.
It was bad. The first 4 seasons are so good. And then it's just bad. It's bad.
Does he try to bang his sister at one point?
Don't they actually bang?
She wants to bang him.
Okay, I don't. They
Did
got
they
married in
bang,
real life.
bro?
They might. I don't know.
I don't know, man.
I don't remember. That's how little it stuck with
It's
me.
like, that's your sister, bro. Don't bang your sister.
Well, they're. No.
But it was a fantastic show.
I am well aware that it's not real pop.
Yeah. I know. Well, no, they were married in real life.
And they were married in real
Yeah.
life. That's what I think is funny.
Don't bang your sister, bro.
Well, it's
Don't
like
bang your sister, bro.
but unrelated to that at all. So there's one other show that actually had 3 other shows on my list. One particular show I thought I had made up because no one in my friend group for years, before the internet became a major thing, remembered the show. Do you guys remember Graveyard High with Rick Moranis? It was a cartoon show with the Universal Monsters, and he was a teacher for 1 season.
No.
Nope, no one else remembers this. See, I didn't think it's existed for years.
Now I know
looked
that you're
up
older
and
than me.
Blank stares.
But yeah, just leave it. I'll just leave it at that because it made me think of Groovy Ghoulies, made me think of that Rick Moranis show.
Oh wow.
But it's kind of, I guess, Universal Monsters, kids, this and that. Like around the same time, like Attack of the Killer Tomatoes had its own television show, a
I
cartoon.
forgot about
Little
that.
Shop of Horrors did for like a season. They all like 1
Shit.
season.
But they weren't good.
Yeah, I remember like the animation in Little Shop being awful.
The Returned? I enjoyed The
I remember
Returned.
they existing and everything about it.
I want to say it was French. There was 2 versions of it. There was the American version, but the original version of it was French. Maybe it was
Yeah,
French.
I think so.
It was foreign. I remember it being.
I think there was a
foreign.
foreign movie called The Returned. I don't know.
No, I want to say that.
So they come back and they have to like try and get their old
Yeah,
jobs
but
back. and
the
stuff like that.
American show was a remake of, The Return. It was French. It was a French drama series, but it was and it ran for a couple seasons. But I super dug it. I watched the American version too, which didn't last as long. I didn't think it was as good.
Yeah, I didn't see the other one.
I liked the French one. Also, Swamp Thing.
Oh yeah, I remember watching the original.
I've not
back
seen
in the
the
day.
new one.
I heard the new one's really
love
good.
the original Original was great.
Yeah, the original was one of the ones I watched Mom a lot on USA because he watched a lot of USA.
It was on USA,
Because we
yes.
watched that, and we watched The Hitchhiker, we watched Amazing Stories, and like that. So we watched a lot of those movies. Like as I said before, my mom's a big horror fan, so we watched a lot of those growing up. One thing I need to go back and rewatch. There's one episode I particularly remember in which there's ghosts of people because they crashed their car in the swamp. And they think they're trying to get to town. They're trying to help them, but they're always circling around, coming back to the same space. So they find their car in the bushes, and they open it up, and skeletons fall out. And they're like, oh, we're dead.
I love when you realize you're dead.
And that's the one episode I remember, but I do want to go back and revisit. I heard the new show is fantastic.
The one season of it?
Yeah. It's like, maybe something. I think they're hoping that, like, they'll be picked up
I have
by
a
someone
horror
else.
series for you, Kim. They made a Clerks show.
The pilot, the live action pilot in 95 was awful, but the 99 cartoon was actually pretty solid.
You want to stick by that statement?
Yeah, I will stick by that statement.
Okay.
There was a Spawn animated show back in the 90s.
Yeah, it was on HBO.
I remember
Yeah.
that.
I saw that
It
actually.
was good. It was
It's
okay.
not bad. I mean, the live action film version of Spawn is truly dreadful.
I need to rewatch that with
But
Will
the
Calls
TV
in
show
there.
wasn't bad, actually. I was pleasantly surprised with it. It had that McFarlane animated style, so
Yeah.
that kind of moved it a long way, I think.
It's like the same style of the stuff
I think
that was
we're
on
ever
at night
actually
in
going to get that
MTV.
updated Spawn that he
He
keeps
keeps
promising.
talking about it.
He's been talking about that for 20 years now.
Didn't they actually make it? Didn't they actually cast that?
They
at one point?
cast it like twice.
I was mix up Spawn and Venom.
It's about the same thing.
Hannibal, bitches.
Never watched it.
Never
I need
saw
to.
it.
Bob!
I was waiting for the finish so I could watch it all in one go. And I was never around
Bob! You're fired, Bob. You're fired.
Oh, okay, so The Apprentice.
No, Hannibal's a
There's
show where
horribly
I
different
actively would. I don't remember when we reached the point where I was watching it and I was just yelling at them. Because you have Hannibal and you have Will and their faces are very close and I just started yelling, kiss, kiss, kiss. But what's great is that like it's not just subtext. They start to. I mean, they never make out, which is a pity.
it. Sorry. I'm sure you can find the fanfic.
Oh, I have. Many
Moves
times
further
over.
away from Kim.
Many times over.
Oh, Mads Mikkelsen and those cheekbones.
Oh my God! Right?
Hell yeah.
Those. Oh, see,
I'm-
he's surpassed Anthony Hopkins for me.
Anthony
Yeah, I'm
Hopkins and the guy from Red Dragon.
He
Yeah,
has
Brian Cox is my favorite. of
He
the-
has surpassed
In Manhunt,
any other
yeah.
Hannibal Lecter for me.
Well, he's had more time to develop a
Yeah.
character. And
Which is
better
why I
writing.
like TV.
Again, and that's something that I still to this day, and this is partly due to my age, but I still have that stigma of TV being lesser than film.
We're in a
Just
TV.
because-
Well, our TV renaissance is starting to come to a
Exactly.
close. But we were in a TV renaissance for about 20 years.
That shows you how behind the times I am on watching TV shows.
But I mean, I think you have all these shows, and again, Bob and I are of that generation. There was all these shows leading up to. A lot of people credit The Sopranos as being kind of your start of the TV renaissance, but there was things leading up to it. Even like The West Wing,
Great show.
arguably, which is a great show. But and Buffy being a part of this, like shows that were more than just your average television show. And for a time, arguably, there's TV shows that surpass movies for me because you have movie makers and movie actors in them.
Yeah. Well, and not just that, but you're given. I mean, it's still a business, and there is still an awful lot of capitalism involved. But you get a more sustained period of time in which you can develop a show, and you have a little bit more freedom to, I think, do your own thing and be a little bit more off the beaten path with television than you do with film, because there's such an astronomical investment involved in the making and marketing of mainstream motion pictures, especially because there's no such thing as indie pictures except for a small marginalized corner, and everything that you see in a multiplex today is watered down and safe bet. There is much more of a maverick spirit to television.
Well, and you have these actors also just being given opportunities they wouldn't be given.
Yes.
I always look at the first season of Breaking Bad as being a great example of this nuanced acting and this storytelling that you can't find this on film because it's become too big budget. Everything is big budget.
Yeah.
Even small budgets are big budgets. We've lost this.
Well, the multiplex is no place for experimentation
No.
or nuance.
But TV is.
Exactly.
And also, we've abandoned the 22 episode model.
Which is, I think is a pretty positive thing.
Oh, I think
because
it's
you don't have to
excellent.
stretch out an episode. You
don't
can.
have to stretch
This is a
out.
story I have to tell, and this is the amount of stories. This is the way I'm going to do it. 8 episodes, 13 episodes, less than 4.
Which is what the British have been doing forever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We
And
adopted the British method.
Exactly.
Or the European method, I guess. We're not trying to fit into
series,
anyone's
not
standard.
a season, a series.
Yes, and that's a big distinction.
Absolutely.
So you could take that extra year to refine your story. I think if we had, for whatever issues that Stranger Things season 2 might have had, season 3 I think was a really strong season. Taking that extra year to refine the story to make sure it was right was the way to go.
As opposed to trying to turn something over in 3 months.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, and I think it shows. I think where the downside of having years between seasons, or in some cases like 10 years because something's revived itself between seasons of things, is that you feel like you have to revisit a show in order to kind of be caught up.
Which could be kind of on purpose. Like, man, maybe more
Yeah.
likely to go buy the DVD if you kind of forget what happened.
The upside is that there's no rush, and it's back to that movie thing of a movie comes out, you're going to get a sequel. The earliest is probably 2 years later,
yeah.
unless they film something back to back, but which is not normal unless you're planning for that. So you have writers and actors an opportunity to build, and not just hi baby, and not just try to cram something out a couple months.
For half a second, I thought you were saying that to me.
You know, my mom did think you guys were married at the wedding.
What?
Yeah, she's like, so Tony and Kim, they're married, right?
Oh, come on. We don't bicker enough, man.
We don't bicker
We need to work
enough.
on the bickering, man.
So I think we have pretty much exhausted our
Bob,
list
that
for the
would
most
make
part.
that would make you their
Yes.
child.
No, it
Kim's
would- it
like
would
4
make
months
you
younger
our
than me.
child. Which is why she's always the tough love. Fuck you, Cody. So there you
And
go.
you're like, hey son, come here and drink some J&B. We're gonna watch some religious scare films.
Are we?
As
this
we
is a-
wrap up, the only thing I had left on my list I was going to just toss out there was Night Gallery, which essentially is a sequel series to Twilight Zone, and The Veil, which is Boris Karloff hosted in the 50s and 60s that you find in bargain bins here and there because the rights are wherever the fuck they are. Looking more anthologies because there were a lot of them back then. So a lot of them haven't made its way to disc for whatever reason. I think Vincent Price hosted one at one point too. It's just the thing. But there's a lot of great television shows out there, whether it be cartoons, anthologies, long form entertainment, short form entertainment that we do find on television. That we talked a lot about our youths and the stuff that influenced us, whether too early or too soon. But now our current renaissance of horror on television. Any parting thoughts before we wrap it on up and Kim kicks us out? Our neighbor's cat is here.
I am looking forward to season 2 of Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah.
It can't come soon enough.
Watch The Terror in the meantime.
Well, thank you for the recommendation. I will check that out. Yeah, I'm a massive fan of the first season of Haunting of Hill House. I thought it was just brilliant.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see what they do with Turn of Screw, and with as a message to I think the whole group rather than just Kim, that the Turning comes out in the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
and then there's 2
I
different
think that
versions
needs
of
to
the.
be a field trip.
Yeah, sure, I can be on that.
I'm
Are
down.
we should field trip Dr. Sleep.
I'm seeing it Thursday.
Oh, okay. Fuck you, Bob. Never mind.
Well, I'm going to New York this weekend. I wanted to get
Fuck
it before
you,
I
Bob.
left. Of course, it'll be the past by the time this comes out. So I wanted to see it before I went off.
I like to travel the world.
But thank you guys. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you guys for talking to us.
Yeah.
Talking to me.
Thanks for sitting through this.
The,
I mean, like, with the amount that I go off the rails on shit, if you can stick to the end, you're my mom. So thank you.
Thanks, Mom.
here. Or that, or Jennifer Lovely.
Are we kind of?
Thank you, Jennifer.
We're kind of like the equivalent of the last season of Friends at this point. We're starting to go. Yeah.
So listen to catch up to the first 12 episodes of a Ghost Stories podcast, or 13, however they were.
And look for the new
Then look
episodes
for the
of
new-
Ghoulish Tendencies.
Along with our future Worst Wednesdays thing idea we're packing out. That's
Yes.
going to be fun. Look at some of it's not just 2 hours of us yapping. It's, a 20-minute review of a bad movie.
Possibly with live tweeting.
Yes, possibly. We'll see how things go.
Ooh,
It's
that
an
sounds like
interesting
fun.
project to take a look at. And then, it's going to be fun. So it'll be the 15th this comes out. Between this episode and the one after this, we'll be doing a Getting Drunk at Tony's, watching a bunch of Italian
Woo, woo!
films on J&B.
Which
Yes.
Kim will be live tweeting as well.
This
And
will
we'll probably
be
record a podcast.
this will be the J&B Italian Genre Cinema
the thing is,
Festival, which is still in the works.
I'm going to likely bring in everything, and then we can just record commentary for something we don't know we're about to watch until we watch it.
I am
with
looking
alcohol.
so forward to
So look
springing
forward to
some
that
stuff on you
extra,
guys.
I hope
extra
that he springs
episode.
strip nude for your killer on us.
Oh,
I want to hear
just-
Kim's
just
Just
reaction
watch
to
that, so I don't think he's going to watch
No,
it.
you don't.
Anyway, so thank you for listening to City of Geek podcast. Find us at cityofgeek.com. Like, subscribe. Find us on iTunes and SoundCloud, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. Find us all on Twitter, and go to cityofgeek.com, Facebook groups, etc., etc. And we'll see you next time. Thank you for speaking geek with us at City of Geek.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Oh, God. Seriously?